Back to the 70th NFL Draft, one of the shocking moments of day one, last pick, Denver Broncos. Maurice Clarett, who hasn't played football in 2 years, selected by the Broncos. The Broncos didn't have a first-round pick. Likely that guy would have been overshadowed by Clarett. He's holding his press conference in Denver right now.
I feel like just being back in college for the first time, and I'm just excited, just ready to get out here and start working.
What were the last 2 years like for you? I mean, sitting out of football for 2 years, was that tough for you?
I was a little bit, just having to watch it and having played my whole life since I was 5. But I had great support with the people around me, from my lawyer, David Kenner, and the people that were around me, and I'm just ready to get back out here and start playing football.
Do you think it might give you a little more motivation than other guys, and especially with all the questions against you set out that you have a little more motivation to prove yourself to start?
I'm not sure if it's more motivation than other people, but I can say my desire, my drive is real high right now. I can feel the energy that I felt probably when I was a freshman going into college. And, I'm coming into a great program. The bar is set high here. They had a great tradition of running backs. It seemed like every running back that came through the system kind of outran the other one. So Coach Turner, he took a gamble on him and Coach Shanahan, and I just don't want to make them look stupid.
Maurice, you know the perception has been out there that you've struggled to keep in shape, you struggled with weight and all that sort of thing. Where are you now in terms of your conditioning, your weight, and where do you need to get to be ready to play?
Well, that's something me and Coach Shanahan was going to talk about, and Coach Turner, as far as the weight and everything. But from here on out, just whatever they ask me, whatever they want me to do is what I'm going to do. So I showed to prove and do it before when I was in college, and I plan on taking it to another level now that I'm in the NFL.
Did you feel like you were in good shape at the combine? Maybe just a little bit big, muscle-wise?
Yeah, more so. I had to leave the weights alone, but the combine is like water under the bridge right now. I'm back to doing what I love to do, and what I succeeded at, and that's playing football. And I just can't wait to get out here and, bang around with a couple players, and just back to football.
It's kind of rare that a third-round pick has had as much publicity as you've had. How do you think that you'll be accepted when you go into the locker room? Because obviously most of the players that are drafted, probably the players in the locker room don't know a lot about, but your story's been on every sports network for the last 2 years,
I don't know. It's cool. I think the story was unique. It was just the whole situation, but I think it was a lot of tension just from the simple fact that I could play football. If the situation would have been with somebody else or somebody else who couldn't play football, it might have been a different story and a different inning. But like I said, all that stuff's behind me. I'm ready for the rookie jokes and everything. I'm just happy to be around the players. I just want to get out here and fellowship with the teammates and, just get out here and practice.
Maurice, who did you lean on during these last couple of years when you're going through so much? Who are the people you really leaned on?
Probably most of I had a great relationship with my attorney, David Kenner, and my mother also. But, for so long, I had so many people just telling me yes to everything I did. And, nothing I did was wrong. And just having my attorney just tell me right from wrong, and being able to mature and grow and accept humility. So I would say has been one of my biggest supporters.
Maurice, if you could change one thing that's gone on the last 2 or 3 years, what might that be?
I don't know. I think it's a happy ending right now. I'm in a great system on a great team that runs the ball, and I'm here. I'm living a dream right now in the NFL. So I feel as far as the running back situation here, I got a great coach, a great system, and the town is a great town to play football in.
I understand you've had some conversations in the past with Terrell Davis, like at the combine, et cetera. What has TD told you about this system, or?
When we talked, it was just more support. He said he didn't do as well as he wanted to at the combine, and he got drafted late. At that point in time, I wasn't trying to hear that. But, I'm sure I get a chance to talk to him more, and him being from here and coming through the program, running for who knows how many yards, and, But I'm sure he has a lot of good advice he can offer me.
Do you think
you'd be here to work for Bobby Turner?
Oh, definitely. Coach Turner was the one I actually had a personal relationship with. When I first came to the combine, he had coached at Ohio State, and him and another works for the NFLPA, Scotty Graham. We all sat down and talked, and it was a personal relationship. And one thing he kept on telling me was, keep in touch with me every week. And he kept on saying they was interested in me. They wouldn't know they was going to pick me. But he said they would pick me if I was there and I was sitting. And I actually had left because I thought, saying the third round was pretty over. I didn't even know they had a pick. But when he called me, if it wasn't for him, I don't think I'd be here.
When's the last time somebody stuck their neck out like that for you?
Oh, man. It's been a long time, I don't want to let him down. That's why the first thing I said to him and Coach Shanahan and general manager was, when can I get in and work? And that's the things we're trying to work out now. When can I get in as soon as possible and just work my butt off and just any way I can help the team, running the ball, special teams, anything. I'm just ready to get working.
Maurice, when you got that call,
Yeah. Yeah, yes, it did.
when you got that call from Bobby and you were drafted, did you finally get that feeling that I told you so? This is going to happen for me?
No, it's not more of a told you so. I had a plan for every situation. If I was drafted early, if I was drafted late, not drafted at all. I'm not on a I told you so attitude. I'm just happy to be here. I'm really living a dream right now. And, but the celebration is over. I celebrated yesterday, and now it's time to go to work.
When was the last time you tackled anybody on kick coverage?
Probably spring ball. When I first came to Ohio State, I didn't even play. I wasn't even playing, getting reps at all. It was just completely special teams. That's why, I never had a problem with it. I just enjoy playing football, running around hitting people. But football is football to me. I'm not getting caught up in how many reps I get here, how many reps I get there. Hard work will pay off. And if I'm out there starting, if I'm out there getting a little bit of reps, it's just all the work I put into the situation.
Maurice, after everything you've been through, have you changed as a person in terms of your outlook on your football career and perhaps how you deal with people, that sort of thing? Have you changed at all?
Probably I cherish it more so before. I used to, I want to say take it for granted, but I used to think football would be there all the time. And when it wasn't, it was just a different situation. I didn't know kind of what to do. So I still treat everybody the same with respect, but I definitely learned a whole lot more humility.
There's probably been more written about your 40 time than any recent player in memory. But on the field, there's the plays fast. I mean, do you think that 40 was kind of unfair to you in terms of, not unfair to you, but I mean, do you feel like you play faster than that time showed?
I don't know. Like I said, it's a measuring stick. And, like I said, it's water under the bridge now. I'm here, I'm in the system, and I'm just ready to get going. The fact of the matter is I could have ran faster and I should have ran faster, but I didn't. But I'm ready to get working now. I love playing football. I'm not being judged on a 40 time or how high I jump. I'm basically being judged on how can I fit into a system, how well I run, and, things like that.
Do you have any regrets about the stuff you said about Ohio State? That just
Okay.
stirred up. Do you have any regrets about the stuff you said about Ohio State? It stirred up such a tempest when it came out.
Oh, no, it was just basically clearing the air out with things, And my relationship with Ohio State now is a good one. And I think, like I said, it's just water under the bridge. Everything that happened in college is just like kind of a closed chapter. And the new chapter in the clean slate is with the Denver Broncos now. So I guess, or I would like for people to say my name and mention they'd be with the Denver Broncos and not all the hoopla and everything else.
Do you think you have a shorter leash because of everything that's happened with you? I mean, than most rookies might have coming into an organization?
What do you mean, a shorter leash?
Well, I mean, you may be considered to have a couple strikes against you already coming in, and that, if anything happened, whereas if somebody else coming in fresh that didn't have all the things that happened to them.
No, this business right now is going to be strictly on how can I play football. And if I go out there and I fail at playing football, so I would expect to be criticized. But, like I said, everything's on my shoulders right now and how well I gel with my teammates and how well I learn the system. So, like I said, when I leave here, I'm just going to work. And now it's just kind of like a different motivation now. I know who I'm playing for. I can watch film and I can get things like that done.
Were you watching the draft last night when your name was called, and what was your reaction?
We had about like 10 to 15 people out of the house out in L.A., and we was watching the draft, and I just was looking at the teams I kept in contact with, and I didn't even know that Denver had a pick at the end of the third round. And I think it was when a couple other running backs I got picked, I just kind of waved it off and thought I was going to go the second day or not get drafted at all. And so I just got in the car and left and dropped a couple people off at their hotels and everything. And my attorney, David Ken, he stayed at the hotel. He stayed watching the draft. And I talked to Coach Turner. I thought he was calling. I thought the third round was over. He called me. I thought he was calling for support. But after that, he was like, "We picking you up." And I was like, "You serious?" And he's like, yeah, we come to pick you up. And I was like, when can I work? He said, don't worry about that right now. Let's just get you out here and do all the PR. But I was like, nah, I want to work right now.
A couple more for Maurice.
Maurice,
are you? Intense schedule. We got to get to the next thing.
Are you going to come here to Denver from this point on to work out and get in shape, or do you have a personal trainer you're going to work out?
Oh, no, I'm here. No holdouts, no nothing. I'm here day one in camp, everything. You know what I mean? You won't write about me holding out anything. I'm here working with the teammates, gelling with the team. I'm here working, whatever. I'm just ready to go to work.
Coach said that, you know, if you would have played, that you may have been a top 10 pick. What do you think about that? If you would have had the playing time the last couple of years?
Who knows? You know, you can say a lot of ifs and buts about a lot of things, but the fact of the matter is I'm in a great situation with a great team right now, and I'm not caught up into what I would have did or what I could have been.
Maurice, you keep talking about getting back to work. What would it mean to be in a locker room with teammates, camaraderie, something you haven't had for 2 years?
That means everything to me. Like I said, it was a long time ago. It's 2 years. It seems like forever ago, and it means everything. I just can't wait to start gelling with the teammates and just start creating personal relationships and, you know what I mean, just start running, being a Denver Bronco and running the ball.
Maurice, we need to run you along. How about if you step away from the podium, hold up the jersey, one side first, then the other side, and smiling the whole time. Smiling like you mean it.
New beginning for Maurice Clarett. His agent, Steve Feldman, helped to resurrect the careers of a couple of other players who are considered to have difficulties. Corey Dillon, Rodney Harrison, both wound up with the Super Bowl champions. He got a hold of Clarett just 3 weeks before the Combine. He was 260 pounds because the previous agent had told him he should bulk up a little bit more. They tried to get all of that weight off of him, which was part of the reason why he timed so bad at the Combine. He had just dropped all that weight. He was exhausted.
The only thing about this press conference, though, when they asked him about who was your support system, were you closest to, and when the first name is your attorney, it tells you about Maurice Clarett's last 2 years away from football.
Yeah, I look at him, you know, when I listened to that and he said everything else is water under the bridge, it's a new beginning. Well, we hope so, because right now, either he didn't work hard enough, was given bad information, like Susie just said, to bulk up too much, or had bad direction by people that were training him. So if he wants that all to be water under the bridge, that's fine then. He needs to live at the Denver Bronco weight room and the facility and listen to what they have to say, work hard and do everything they say. The direction has been a problem for him in the past, and his work ethic, quite honestly, and his attitude for quitting after a bad 40 time.
The adversity part that this guy's not dealt with. Hey, listen, he's going to have competition in training camp. It isn't going to go well all the time. Learning the passing game and what have you. He's going to get frustrated. What's going to happen when he gets frustrated? Because it will not go smoothly.
When he dealt with injuries the first year at Ohio State, you know, he was still a productive member of that team. When he did it at the Miami of Florida national championship game, you know, when the ball was intercepted by Sean Taylor, who jarred it loose? Who didn't quit on a play? Maurice Clarett, when he has the pads on, played hard. Now, he did say he's not going to be holding out. No, he's the third-round pick. Right. I don't think you want to be talking about holding out when you're last pick in the third round. That shouldn't even be in the equation. He was right, asked that question, he answered it. But he wants to be there. He's got a lot to prove. He's got a chip on his shoulder. And he was a highly regarded player coming out of high school. That's what people forget. He was the best player in the entire nation coming out of high school, and he had a great year. He backed it up. This kid has ability. Now, all of a sudden, you're saying, right, says he quit at the con. I think he got discouraged, and as Susie said, maybe he didn't feel he was at the maximum physical situation he should be in, and now all of a sudden he's got a chance to prove the doubters wrong.
Yeah, Mort said it best. How he deals with the adversity now, I really think, is going to be the key for him.
And
he will be discouraged again.
Huge amount of competition. You've got Ron Dane there now. He has a lot to prove. Quentin Griffin, Mike Anderson, these are guys that got hurt last year. They're all looking for their chance to play. Maurice Clarett will have to contend with that. Plenty more when we come back from New York.
ESPN's exclusive coverage of the NFL Draft is presented by Coors Light, the official beer sponsor of the NFL. And in part by Sears. Find the freshest ideas for spring at Sears. Good life, great price.
round 6 underway, so let's put a bow on round 5. You know, Andy Reid of the Eagles loves to take guards. Scott Young, BYU, but the big story, 10 Oklahoma Sooners led there by Lance Mitchell.
How come every time we do an update, I always highlight a Philadelphia Eagle draftee? You know, Andy Reid's got to be thrilled with the way this thing's gone. Scott Young's a good pick, former defensive tackle, only 1 year at offensive guard. You look at a kid like Lance Mitchell, out of Arizona Cardinal now, out of Oklahoma, and you see a guy who had a high grade at one point in time after he came over from the junior college ranks and then really slid down the draft board dramatically. And I think that's where you see even a Ryan Wallace on that screen out of Temple. You know, he went to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He had a higher grade. So linebackers dropping a bit. Lance Mitchell, you look at the size, you look at the athletic ability. He has the skills you look for from a physical standpoint. Had a great year after he came from the JUCO ranks in 2002. Had a phenomenal season. And in 2003, injured. Tore his ACL early in the year, sat out the rest of that season, obviously rehabbing from the knee injury. Came back this year. Tackle total dropped dramatically. Looked a little stiff. Wasn't as fluid. Missed some tackles. Was not a big factor. He even questioned his instincts and his ability to read and react to a play. And I think he was a very average performer on that Oklahoma defense. Now you say, well, he was only 1 year removed from the knee injury. Was that the factor? You go back 2 years ago, he looked like an excellent prospect. So here's a kid who's got to revert back to that old form. If he doesn't, he will not be a factor in training camp. But at this stage of the draft, this is about where you expect him to go. You'd have asked me back in September, I would have probably said second round.
And Oklahoma, with their 10 picks, closing in on the record that Ohio State set last year with 14 picks, a record for a 7-round draft. Florida State had that solid lead. Georgia, successful season. You can see maybe the tide changing a little bit in terms of where the talent is coming from in college football. Miami, a little bit of an off year because so many guys have gone over the last few years.
No question. I think you look at this and it's going to keep going up and up because Oklahoma has more players, obviously. Brandon Shelby's a defensive back. You look at a guy as well. We talk about position changes that players make. Antoine Randall went from a quarterback at Indiana to a wide receiver with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Drew Bennett, backup quarterback at UCLA, wide receiver at Tennessee. You see transition from quarterback to wide receiver with Rasheed Marshall in the Cards. And Matt Jones, obviously, at Arkansas is going to be doing the same thing with the Jaguars. A kid who does not have the skills to be a quarterback in the National Football League. He's only 6 feet tall, 188 pounds, very athletic. And I talked to Rich Rodriguez. He said this kid is tough. He shows the ability from that standpoint to be able to transition. You see the quick feet. He was a scrambling quarterback at West Virginia, has the kind of size, and he vertical 38 inches at the combine workout, ran in the mid-4.5, so he's not the 4.35, the 4.45 guy. Decent speed, more quick than fast, and a kid who's got a nice attitude, nice approach. He's going to be a work in progress. He's going to be one of those developmental guys you're going to have to help on special teams to make a contribution while he's learning the nuances of being a wide receiver in the National Football League, now with the San Francisco 49ers.
And plenty of precedent has been set of guys who were successful quarterbacks in college and then made the transition to wide receiver in the NFL. Antoine Randall has been great for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Drew Bennett was the go-to guy there in Tennessee for Billy Volek at the end of the season. Adding to that list, you can throw in Hines Ward, also in Pittsburgh, and then Mort, you love to talk about Matt Jones. He's going to have to do it now this year.
And some people thought Matt Jones might convert to tight end or H-back because he is 6'6", 242, and he was also a basketball player. But when he runs a 4.37, they say, oh, we can line him up outside.
Well, you look at the tight ends now, and I wondered if they would try and put him at tight end. You're right, with that speed, you want him to run that field. But tight ends today, and we saw that Heath Miller got drafted certainly by the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first round, and he's the new prototypical tight end we see in the NFL. And tight ends today have got to be able to split out, run the middle of the field, play off the line of scrimmage, and certainly led by Tony Gonzalez, who has been the absolute man at that tight end position of the last few years. There were 8 tight ends this year that led their respective teams in receptions. And one of the biggest reasons I think so, not only are they excellent athletes, is I don't think defenses enough jam them on the line of scrimmage.
Oh, they're getting free releases, Mike.
They absolutely, I remember in the old days when a tight end would just line up next to the tackle, you could get a decent jam on him then. I still don't think they jam him enough. Then you split him out. You saw in the tape I had of Heath Miller, he's lined up on a corner. I like that matchup for a 6'5", 255-pound guy. So the tight ends, if you can find one of these guys that can get off the line of scrimmage and they're getting the free releases, they're a quarterback security blanket, without a doubt, in the NFL.
And finding them has become so widespread because Antonio Gates really kind of set the trend. Here's a guy who hadn't played football. He was a basketball player, and now GMs, they're looking beyond football. They're looking to the NBA,
they're like
college
forwards.
basketball.
They're like power forwards.
They're scouting
Of all the
basketball
major
players.
sports, Susie, the NFL is the most trendy of all the leagues. So about copycat league, they see somebody be successful. Boy, they're all trying to find the next basketball player who can come into the National Football League. We talked about some of those names, Mort, that they actually did scout. Antonio Gates opened up that door, so did Marcus Pollard.
Well, listen, for years I've heard personnel directors, general managers say, boy, you know, we're losing a lot of tight ends to the NBA. I mean, there's always been this thought process that they are losing quality athletes to the NBA, but there are guys who are good enough to make the NBA that may be able to make the crossover to football.
One player that we've spent some time talking about, Antaj Hawthorne, who tested positive for marijuana at the NFL Combine, selected by Oakland. So what does that mean?
Well, I'll tell you what, the Oakland Raiders, they will take chances, obviously.
Really?
In the draft, they go for those former first-round busts who don't make it. Here was talking about a former first-rounder at one point in time, Mort. Now he drops into the sixth round. First pick in round 6. Oakland moved up to get him. Philadelphia had that pick. The Eagles obviously very active with all those extra choices, getting rid of some of those. Actually trying to pick up choices for next year's draft already. Morton, you can enlighten us about that in a minute. But you look at Antaj Hawthorne, 6'3 1/4", 323 pounds, has the big frame, and you would think, Mike Golick, that he's a clogger. He's a guy who can occupy, free up the linebackers. That's why he had that first, second-round projection going into this whole process.
Yeah, that's what he's going to have to do as well. Again, I don't think he uses his hands well enough. He can make some penetration, but I think at the next level, he's going to have trouble getting rid of the blockers. I don't think some of the moves are going to be able to work. He's got to work on his hands a little better when he's with the Oakland Raiders. Like, big guy, if they can teach him to just eat up those blocks and let the linebackers make the plays and make the occasional play, I think he'll work out there, because right now in Oakland, it hasn't really worked out too well when they're trying to bring some people in.
I think the Oakland Raiders, anybody that's ever been associated with the first round, they take. He was drafted in the first round, didn't make it, bring him to Oakland. He was projected.
Former Heisman winners.
Anybody that had any acclaim and it doesn't get it done with the organization they were originally with, come to the Raiders. It seems like they do that with everybody. And at one point in time, Hawthorne was projected to be a first-round draft choice.
Al Davis is still running the show.
Clearly, this draft has been about defense because they took care of the offensive side in free agency, and not just with Randy Moss, but Lamont Jordan. He has a chip on his shoulder, what he wants to prove. It. Now, this passing offense could be one of the most prolific. Kerry Collins, strong arm. Ron Curry, Jerry Porter to go along with Randy Moss. That potentially could be a lot of fun to watch.
Well, if their defense doesn't improve, they better score a ton of points.
Well, you know, I know just in talking with Marty Schottenheimer, the San Diego Chargers coach, he said, hey, Randy Moss, of course, gets your attention when the Raiders bring him in. But what really got his attention was bringing in Lamont Jordan, because he knows that's a tough runner who, with Norv Turner's style of offense, will make Randy Moss that much more effective and the Raiders that tougher to stop.
Are they going to stop anybody? I mean, that's the thing. Are the Raiders ever going to stop somebody? I think Rob Ryan's going to do a great job, their defensive coordinator. He has to get personnel, and they've dressed cornerback heavy early on, got some speed guys. The question is, are those corners that have the speed, like a Fabian Washington, do they have enough ball skills to be successful in the NFL?
31st in points last year. And, of course, just like every other team, Oakland trying to catch the Patriots. They'll have first crack at it. That's how the NFL season starts in 2005 in September. The Patriots, of course, have made a gold mine out of day 2. We'll explain that when we come back.
Welcome back to the 2005 NFL Draft here at the Players Roundtable. All right, just a short time ago, guys, we heard Maurice Clarett utter the ultimate draft day cliche, I'm living a dream. 12-year veteran, 7-year veteran. What's the reality? What do these rookies have ahead?
Well, these guys have absolutely no idea what they're in for. You know, now that you've been drafted, everybody right now, they are in dreamland. They've made it to the NFL. They have the opportunity to be on an NFL roster for at least a day. And right now, they're going to take the next step. Now you got to start talking about a contract. All these guys, you know, some of them probably think, well, now that I've been drafted, I'm going to get a paycheck tomorrow. That's not true. You've got to go through contract negotiations. Most of those won't be done until the day before training camp. Some of them won't be done until the day after training camp. And there's just a lot of those things. Plus, you're taking another man's job. You know, there's nobody on my team that's going to sit there and say, hey, I've played long enough. This guy is really good. I think I'm just going to let him take my job. You know, that's not going to happen.
They're being a little naive, and hopefully they have a good support system around them, whether it be an agent or family or guys that have played previously. I know that's a big deal they make out about the University of Miami, that guys go back there and the guys that are in the pros come back and teach their younger guys about it. But there's a lot of demands on your time. If these guys are looking at it as anything other than a business, they're in for a real rude awakening, because there's so much that goes into it, whether it be, like John said, your contracts. You're not going to get that done for a while. So in terms of the money, it's not going to be there right away. You've got to find ways to deal with it. Family and friends, how are you going to deal with that situation? You have your public relations, community relations. You not only have to learn the playbook. You know, it's not just football where you're coming in, oh, I'm going to learn the X's and O's. All of a sudden, you're going to have a lot more demands on your time. How are you going to handle those demands on your time? Now you do have a little bit of money in your pocket, or you're soon to have a little bit of money in your pocket. How are you going to spend that money? How are you going to spend that time? You got a lot of negative forces pulling at you from different directions. How are you going to handle all those tough situations? So these guys, hopefully they have good support systems around them, but the main thing they need to do, and I don't know how it is in Washington, come in and try and keep your mouth closed and learn as much as you can from the older guys, and hopefully cling on to the right guys and pick up as much as you can.
Keep your mouth closed, as in when we heard Pac-Man Jones say, oh, yeah, I can learn the bump and run in a couple of days. It's got a little...
That was interesting. Yeah, it's going to take a little bit more than that. You know, it'll take me a couple days. I think he backtracked and said maybe a week or two. I mean, it's... Some guys, it takes years to learn that stuff. And obviously, he has a lot of talent. He was drafted very high, and maybe he'll pick it up quicker than others. But he may want to tone down the ego a little bit and go in and try and learn from some of the veteran guys that are going to be on his team. Try and study tapes of other veterans around the league.
All right, real quick, talk about the lifestyle. We look at an Adrian McPherson, his off-the-field issues well documented, now going to New Orleans. What does he have to look ahead to there?
Well, it's not necessarily what he has to look ahead to. It's what the organization has to look ahead to. And some of the older veterans that are there, they have to take this guy and say, okay, we've got a guy who's got a lot of talent. This guy could really help us out this year, next year, and down the road. Somebody in that organization has to say, hey, you know, let's not go here, let's not do this, let's watch a little more film, let's work out, let's go home, let's do all these other things. There's other options. You know, take him under your wing, bring him along, and make him a great part of the organization. Don't let him have the opportunity to have bad decisions. You know, surround yourself with good people, and things will turn out better.
Just to reiterate what John's saying, you know, it's no secret that there's some influences in New Orleans, just like there are in any of the cities of the NFL. But New Orleans definitely has some temptation there, and because of his track record and because of what he's been through, it's very important, like John said, to surround himself with good people. They're going to help him make good decisions and put him in the right situations and right environment.
Yeah, New Orleans definitely one of the toughest cities lifestyle-wise to play for. All right, Trey, let's head up to you. You've got some news on the NFC North?
That is correct, Andrea Kramer. Thank you very much. Welcome back to the NFL Live Set. Trey Wingo here with Merrill, Jaws, and our insider, Randy Mueller. Guys, let's be honest. As long as there has been an NFC North, 3 seasons, the Green Bay Packers have been the champions of that division.
Dominated.
That, my friends, may be about to change. When you look at what the other teams in this division, Merrill, have done, and what Green Bay, for lack of a better term, hasn't done, right? Everybody else is going in one direction, and are the Packers going in the opposite direction?
Well, I think the second Minnesota got rid of Randy Moss, that told me they are building a team. They have Dante Culpepper there, so they obviously have a chance to win a championship. Cedric Benson in Chicago stabilizes that organization. I think they can build from that as long as they get play from their quarterback and their defense elevates their play. And Detroit, even though I didn't think Mike Williams was a top 10 player, I don't think he's a dominant wide receiver, he actually fits perfectly with Detroit, because you have Roy Williams on the other side, who is explosive, who is dynamic. He will play on the weak side. That would be a great compliment there. Now it's about Harrington living up to his expectations at the quarterback position.
Well, and look at Minnesota. If you look at a team that is the most improved the entire, I call it no longer the offseason, it's the non-playing season. You look at the Minnesota Vikings, in free agency, they've built up their defense. You look at what they've done offensively. And I think with Rosenthal and Kleinsasser back, the right tackle and the tight end, they get back to what they like to do. Pound the football, then get those big explosive plays, chunks of yards, all those buzzwords out of their passing game. So I think when you look at Minnesota, and I agree with Merrill, they've had addition through subtraction when they got rid of Randy Moss. I like Randy Moss going to Oakland. I also like him leaving Minnesota. Now they could focus on the team they have to build in Minnesota. Mike Tice has done a terrific job so far this non-playing season.
And amazingly, for anybody that's followed the Vikings for the last few years, they could win games defensively now with all the changes.
That's yet to be seen, but I think they're better.
It's a possibility that they have upgraded on almost every position. Randy, if you go to Green Bay, And they had major needs defensively, which they really did not address through the first 2 rounds. They got a couple of cornerbacks, but their big splash was taking Aaron Rodgers. Long term, this may be a good thing for the Green Bay Packers. But in the short term, they're going to suffer because of that decision, aren't they?
Well, they're going to lose ground initially, no question about it. They need to stop people on defense. They need to find a way to slow people down from running the ball on them. But when you take a player like they did and make him, for all intent and purposes, a backup for the next year or two, it's tough to gain ground on your opponents in your division. It's a philosophical discussion that is really no right answer. I think they probably did right for the organization. I'm not sure they did right for their team this year.
They have really struggled defensively. They had to match, and Minnesota offered a defensive end, Aaron Campman, just to keep somebody in the fold. Minnesota trying to do some more.
Right,
addition by subtracting from Green Bay. Stay with us. The draft continues right here on ESPN.
Oh, the diehards are hanging in here at the Javits Center as we roll through the 6th round of the 2005 NFL Draft. Highlights, checking in on the Mazda draft track. The quest is on to find the next Tom Brady. In the 4th round, the Bears take Kyle Orton. Great start to the season at Purdue, a bit of a fall from grace. Stephon LaFour's led one of the most prolific college offenses, goes to the Panthers. And then in the 5th round, Adrian McPherson, lots of question marks, great talent, limited college career. He goes to the New Orleans Saints. And you can't really fault all those scouts back in 2000 for not noticing Tom Brady. After all, he was 5th on the depth chart when he got to Michigan, was beat out by Brian Griese. Then he had to compete for the job against Drew Henson. But he always knew he could be the best, but it would be a long wait. He was taken in the 6th round, pick number 199. 6 quarterbacks went ahead of him.
With the 18th pick in the 1st round, the Jets select quarterback Chad Pennington from Oxford University.
Giovanni Carmazzi, quarterback of the Flying Dutchman of Hofstra.
Chris Redmond, quarterback Louisville, goes to the Baltimore Ravens.
T. Martin, quarterback from the University of Tennessee.
Mark Bolger, quarterback from the University of West Virginia.
Spurgeon Wynn, Division I AA quarterback, less than 50% completion percentage, goes ahead of Joe Hamilton.
Would you say that again? 47%, 13 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. This guy went ahead of Joe Hamilton. I don't know. My tape must be blocked out or something. I can't figure this one out now.
An anxious time for so many football players who are college stars. Among the last 6 picks taken, a familiar name if you're a college football fan, Tom Brady, the quarterback who all he did was lead this football team, put them in the right position.
Accurate. It was a very catchable ball. He really knows when to take a little off as well. And then that's the key, and he stands in that pocket very tough. He'll take a hit. The question's going to be mobility. Only runs a 5.2, 5.40. And, of course, when you have those edge pass rushers, you have to avoid the initial defensive end, the initial pass rusher. Can he do that at the pro level? Going to New England, Drew Bledsoe, his forte certainly isn't mobility. It's dropping back, throwing the football. Brady can do that, and certainly New England's offense already designed for Bledsoe. Now comes Brady. Can he overcome that lack of mobility?
And if you look at that list, you will see Giovanni Carmazzi once again at the 3rd round pick. That's the one that still nags at Tom Brady, because Tom Brady, as you know, grew up in the Bay Area. Certainly his favorite team was the 49ers, the Joe Montana, the Steve Young story again. And when Carmazzi was taken, he admits he was crushed. And I think he still has a chip on his shoulder trying to prove himself. But you see that 6th round there where you see Mark Bolger and Spurgeon Wynn taken ahead of him. But I'll tell you one other story. Mike Riley, the head coach of the San Diego Chargers, had fallen in love with Tom Brady prior to the draft. The Chargers were going to take a quarterback in the 2nd. They were in the throes of the Ryan Leaf fiasco there. And they had 3 6th-round picks, but they used the first of those in front of Tom Brady on a linebacker who really hasn't distinguished himself anywhere. And eventually, they just end up taking Jawan Sider of Florida A&M.
And certainly Tom Brady is starting to separate himself, obviously, with Super Bowl victories and MVPs from the current quarterbacks that we have. And if you look at his maturation process, as he's up with some of the best names to ever play the game at the quarterback position, I think the thing to remember is it was a process. When he first got his shot, he didn't come in slinging the ball all over the place down the field, and everybody was saying, wow, look at this guy and what he can do. I call call him the best assist man in the NFL, just like the NBA, a point guard. And early on, he was throwing shorter passes to a lot of different receivers. He's still doing that. This year, 10 receivers caught 10 or more passes. But now, maturing, he's able to throw, they're letting him throw the ball farther down
physically
the field
stronger.
now. So, exactly right. And so it took a little bit of time. He spreads the ball out so well, the system fits him well, and he took advantage of it and is playing great.
What's incredible is his wounds are still so deep. He says he still remembers what it was like to go home and not have had an opportunity to get on the field. And he says no matter how many Super Bowl MVPs he wins, he will never really lose that feeling. But it goes deeper than this with the Patriots across the board. When Bill Belichick looks at his players, he instructs the scouts. How will that guy work into our system come November when maybe he has to fill in because someone else gets injured? It's just an uncanny ability to look down the road.
It's a great opportunity, I tell you, for two people to really get back together, and they knew what they wanted together as individuals and as a group. And that was Scott Pioli, the general manager, and Bill Belichick, the head football coach. When you have two individuals who can work together and each know what the other wants, hey, go out and get me. The trust factor between a general manager and a head coach. And Scott Pioli knows what Bill Belichick wants, and he's been able to get it year after year for Bill Belichick and that coaching staff, and to fit players into a system. Smart, intelligent players who can grasp systems offensively and defensively is what they have been looking for. Now look at New England and say, okay, Tom Brady, give him credit for being a sixth-round pick and taking him. But they took a lot of other players before they took Tom Brady. If they thought he was going to be that good, they'd have taken him a lot higher than round 6. So this was on a flyer, taking a chance. So scouts saw something they liked, said, okay, bring him in. If they thought he was going to be this good, a Hall of Famer, it'd have been a lot higher pick than round 6. And there were a lot of other players, those quarterbacks that went 3, 4, and 5 like Carmine. We've been saying, who's the next Brady in the 3rd, 4th round? There's going to be hundreds and hundreds of quarterbacks that go in those rounds that can't touch a Tom Brady or won't even be close to a Hall of Famer over the next 10 or 15
Who's the next Carmazzi?
Right. Yeah, you'll find a lot more of those more than you will the next time.
Exactly
You'll
right.
find a lot more 3rd-round disappointments than you will 6th-round Hall of Famers. I guarantee you that.
And the philosophy for the Patriots is get that clean fit, that guy that fits the system. He may not be the most athletic, may not be the most talented, great character, fits a role. And that's what all of these guys did. All these guys started in the Super Bowl this year, all taken in later rounds, but they fit the system.
The key to me, it's not who they replace player-wise for this season. Bill Belichick was fortunate enough never to lose a coordinator during the Super Bowl run, but now he's lost them both, Romeo Crennel and Charlie Weiss, Mike.
I couldn't agree more. I think those were the two biggest losses because, and Mel alluded to this is a difficult system offensively and defensively. They need smart players. That's why on their team they have the most college graduates on that team and most versatile players that can play different positions. So it's a lot about, obviously, the players have to execute, but you have to have the right calls as coordinators. You can have a game plan, but then it's when do you call that blitz? When do you call that bomb? So a lot fell on those coordinators. So all the players they've lost and replaced, I think those are going to be the two toughest offensive defense coordinators.
And you can no longer call Bill Belichick just a defensive coach. I mean, he knows both sides of the ball, but listen, he's grooming, he's mentoring young coaches on both sides of those balls. It's going to tax Bill, I really believe, and it's changed the chemistry of the coaching staff. So I think that's the greatest challenge. I mean, listen, it's going to be tough whether Weiss and Crennel were coming back or not to win 4 Super Bowls in 5 years. I just think it's obviously that much tougher.
Eric Mangini, who was the DB's coach, he's going to be the new defensive coordinator. He was the brain trust behind using wide receiver Troy Brown as a DB. So there's a lot of innovation among these young guys, but no one really knows exactly how the offensive coordinator is going to work. As we continue through the 6th round, let's look back on the last 10 picks. Who stands out here, Mel?
Well, I think Hawthorne, obviously, Antaj Hawthorne, says if he can get it together and really maximize that ability and play the level that he did in certain games at Wisconsin, not this past year when he was very average, Oakland may have something. I think you look at him, Anthony Bryant has talent. How bad does he want it at the pro level? He qualified as one of the top underachievers in this draft process, going to Tampa Bay and John Gruden. Look at Bo Skate, 6 years in Texas because of the injuries. If he can stay healthy, he can be a factor with the Titans. He has a lot of ability. He has second-round ability. The word for the injury questions. And, of course, Cedric Houston was productive at Tennessee. Doesn't have awesome skills, but you got to look at the numbers at the end of the day. You're very satisfied with the way he performed for the Volunteers, who have really churned out some running backs. Go back to Jamal Lewis. Cedric Houston won't be even near that good at the pro level, but as a backup running back, as a number 2 back in the NFL, he has a chance to maybe fill that role.
The 6th round continues here from New York, takes us through pick number 214. The New England Patriots have won 3 out of the last 4 Super Bowls. Everybody's shooting for them.
Working our way through round 6 of the 2005 NFL Draft. Welcome back to the NFL Live Set. Trey Wingo here with Merrill Hodge and Ron Jaworski. Now, you just did something off camera that I want you to do
don't even let him
on
do it.
camera here. When the Baltimore Ravens at 22 select wideout Oklahoma, Mark Clayton, you think Kyle Bowler, the quarterback for the Ravens, was doing what?
Oh yeah, he was doing this.
Like I said.
Oh yeah, he was. Oh wait, he was doing the sprinklers, Merrill.
So what you're saying is Kyle Bowler's mobility is as bad as yours. But the big issue here is that they have addressed the pressing need for the Baltimore Ravens, not only through free agency with Derek Mason, who came over from Tennessee, but a guy a lot of people thought was the most polished receiver coming out of this draft, Clayton.
Again, we talk about dimensions when we talk offensively, and Kyle Bowler, I think, will have an outstanding year because of all the dimensions that are now around him. Last year, he had Jamal Lewis, the running back, and Todd Heap, the tight end. That was pretty much it. Derek Mason comes in the fold. Here's a guy over the last 3 seasons caught 90 balls. Hey, he's a good go-to guy. Then all of a sudden, their draft day is Mark Clayton, a guy that I had rated one of the best receivers in the draft. I liked him because he could read on the move, and as Trey said a moment ago, a very polished receiver. Here's Mark Clayton in a slot position, off the line of scrimmage. Watch his release. He's explosive, quickly separating from the defender, and he is aggressive catching the ball in the middle of the field. On this play from the inside slot, Clayton shows his ability to recognize defensive coverage and to uncover, giving his quarterback a clear lane to deliver the football. You can see that more clearly from the end zone. Clayton reads the drop of the middle linebacker and works away from him. That's great understanding and awareness. And here's what I believe you'll see a lot of in the NFL. Motion to give Clayton a clean release. And again, the short area burst and acceleration. He is very similar to the Rams' Torrey Holt in that regard. Mark Clayton wasn't the first receiver taken in the draft, but he could well have the biggest impact in his first year. Yards after the catch. That's what you will see from Mark Clayton. Also, when we talk about, quarterbacks reading coverage, it's just as important that the wide receivers, the running backs, read coverage as well to make the proper adjustments. So when we talk about a polished receiver like Mark Clayton coming into the NFL, he has a great intuitive feel for what the defense is trying to do and reacting to it. I think this is one of the real steals in that early rounds for the Baltimore Ravens.
We always talk about matchups. When you look at Mark Clayton, where will he fit in the National Football League? That last route you saw there in the slot, that's where I think you'll see Mark Clayton playing a lot in the slot. Why? Because you're going to play against safeties and you're going to play against linebackers. And I will tell you this, he'll be a mismatch on a corner anyway. Yep. But you get him on a linebacker and a safety, ooh, advantage Baltimore Ravens.
Well, I tell you what, there may be a big advantage Baltimore Ravens this offseason. They get Derek Mason. They lose Gary Baxter, replace him with Samari Rolle at the cornerback position. That's really an upgrade. So let's take a look now at the Steelers and the Ravens, and you have to put Cincinnati into the mix now in the AFC North.
Absolutely.
We love what Romeo Crennel is going to do in Cleveland. This will not be their year for the Browns.
Not yet.
Of those 3 teams, though, the Ravens and the Steelers have sort of tag teamed the division title the last couple of years. This is suddenly a much tougher division to win after draft day.
A much tougher one, and the team that really intrigues me is the Cincinnati Bengals, not just because of what they have done with the draft stars, defensive players, but because of Carson Palmer. I think a lot of people compared him to Troy Aikman. I think he is a lot like Troy Aikman, actually a little better athlete than Troy Aikman. He is the guy that separates the Cincinnati Bengals in that division. But I still think it's going to go through Pittsburgh, because when you look top to bottom, the Steelers' defense and offense, and Ben will play better this year than he did last year because he's going to have to. Still going to be the team.
Well, I expected that from you, from the former Steeler, but I agree.
I was very objectively on that.
They are.
You think they're not the better team?
No, they are. I'm going to say that they are the team to beat. But also, when you look at the Baltimore Ravens right now, I think the hat must be worn by Kyle Bowler. Now he has the weapons around him. The last couple of years, hey, guys have been on Kyle Bowler, but he had nothing to throw to. Trust me, folks, there wasn't a whole lot of separation from the Ravens wide receivers since Kyle Bowler has been the quarterback. Now he's got the weapons. Now he must wear the hat and get the job done.
And one thing, too, Jaws was dancing there about Kyle Bowler, but I think Brian Billick was also doing a little dance because, Brian Billick likes to throw the football, and, now finally he's got some weapons where I think he can use some designing things and throw the football.
Actually, it's funny you mentioned Billick and dancing, because someone asked him once, what's the one thing we'll never see you do in public? And he said, I'll never dance. You know there's a problem if you see me dancing. He may be very happy,
He may do that in
but
his
I don't
office.
think he'll be shuffling his feet. All right, very interesting with the Ravens, because like you said, Kyle Bowler does have all his weapons, and we are assuming that Jamal Lewis will come out of serving his time and rehabbing his injury and getting back to be the Jamal Lewis he was a couple of years ago. For more on where Jamal Lewis stands, we want to bring in Andrea Kramer from the Cold Pizza Set. Andrea.
Hey, Trey, well, just to get people up to date with what is going on with Jamal Lewis, on February 4th, he began serving a 4-month sentence for using a telephone to facilitate a drug trafficking crime. So he is in a federal prison in Florida. He's expected to get out June 4th, at which time he will have to go to a halfway house. The earliest he would be able to get out of there would be August 4th. The Ravens are hoping that halfway house will be in the Baltimore and the Maryland area so that they'll be able to have him come out for work-related reasons, go to the facility, continuing to rehabilitate his ankle, which was operated on back in January. When I spoke to Brian Billick, he told me that members of the Ravens organization have taken turns visiting Jamal Lewis, but they checked with him first. Are you comfortable with this? Do you want to see us? Lewis indicated that he was. So first it was Bill Tessendorf, the trainer. Then it was Matt Simon, the running backs coach. Brian Billick told me he's expecting Steve Bisciotti, the owner, and Ozzie Newsome to visit him next. And finally, it will be Brian Billick. They're trying to just gauge what his mindset is, keep him as upbeat as possible. They said he is eating well. He is getting some exercise. He is rehabilitating that injured ankle as best as possible. Certainly, it's going to be an adjustment for him. I mean, hey, as we come back with John Jensen and Trent Green, what did you do your off season? I spent time in a federal prison. This is serious. This is not just the way you normally spend an off season. How do you accept back a teammate that has undergone something so serious as this?
Well, I think, you know, it's easier to accept a guy who's accepted the fact that he's done something wrong. If he tries to deny it, if he tries to put the blame on somebody else, then it's harder to accept that guy. But if he accepts what he's done, then I think it's easy to accept him back into the locker room. I think one of the things that in our offensive line room, that one of the words we use a lot is loyalty. And, you know, he's been part of your team. He's been part of your guys. You know, just because he makes a mistake, you're not going to throw him to the wolves and say, hey, he's not one of us anymore. We don't want to associate ourselves with him. And I think the Ravens organization has shown before that they'll stand by their guys. They're showing it now by going down and visiting them. That's part of the family. That's part of being loyal to your guys.
And the example I can give is just in '99 when I got to St. Louis, Leonard Little was coming off of his conviction for drunken driving, and that ultimately killed a woman in St. Louis. And so he had some serious time that he had to serve, and there was a big outcry from the community, rightfully so. But you know what? Just like John said, Leonard stepped up. He said, you know what? I did something wrong. I served my time. And what he did is he would cling to the members of the team, to the members of the organization, and nobody in the St. Louis Ram organization turned their back on him. They helped him in any way they could, whether it be through counseling, not only for alcohol, but counseling just to deal with this. This is an enormous thing when you take someone's life and you have that type of thing hanging over your head for the rest of your life. So the Rams really went the extra mile in terms of getting him counseling and making sure that it was something that he could deal with. And also, you know, Leonard had to serve his time and give back to the community, but he really would cling to his teammates and to the organization. There was a lot of great support there for him.
Yeah, and you can imagine also that same sort of support will be there for the Baltimore Ravens and Jamal Lewis, who, as you recall, has already served a 2-game suspension and had a fine of over $761,000. Well, the NFL draft continues on, round 6 from New York and points beyond. Please stay with us.
What kind of players might you be able to pick up in the 6th round? Wilbert Montgomery led the NFL in yards from scrimmage in 1979 with the Eagles. Mark Rippon was MVP of Super Bowl 26 as the Redskins beat the Bills. Greg Lloyd, a 5-time Pro Bowl linebacker for the Steelers. And then there's TD. Terrell Davis won 2 Super Bowls with the Broncos and was named MVP of Super Bowl 32. And then, of course, Tom Brady, named MVP of 2 Super Bowls and has 3 rings in his 4 years as a starter. Who are the 6th round gems, Mel, from today?
Well, we haven't had enough yet. We're still in the 6th round now. We're just beginning the 6th round, getting actually to the middle of round 6. But I think in the second day of the draft, we have had some guys who have done a good job, at least in terms of teams drafting. I really like what Cincinnati's been able to do throughout this process. They obviously like the entries of 2 players from one school. You go to Georgia, they got David Pollock and Odell Thurman. They also went to Central Michigan. They get Adam Keefe, offensive tackle, and Eric Guychek, center guard. I really think Cincinnati and Marvin Lewis have done a good job so far in this draft process.
And this leads us to our You've Got Mel, presented by Cars.com. And the first question from Herb and Racine is, who are these gems?
Well, I'm going to give you some quarterbacks. I'll give you a running back, and we'll go on through. I think when you look at a couple guys who have a chance to be, I think, very good players. Stephon LaFour is a quarterback out of Louisville. I know he doesn't have the great arm. I know he doesn't have the great size, but he's got all the instincts of the position, great speed, track star in high school, and I think his arm is good enough to be effective in the NFL. And, of course, he's coming in as a 4th-round pick with no pressure at all. I raved about Jerome Mathis throughout the entire 3 to 4 months leading up to the draft because he has return skills. He's dynamic as a kick returner and proven in that area. They did a good job at the Gridiron All-Star game against better competition. Sproles will help out that San Diego offense because even if you have Tomlinson, you need that situational guy. You need that return man, that jack of all trades. That last guy they had in this vein was Lionel Little Train James. And who does Darren Sproles get compared to? Some Lionel James, Dave Meggett, that type of player. Chris Canty, great fit for a 3-4, restructuring that defense, and you got to believe that he will be a very good addition in that 3-4. He had 104 tackles before he got hurt this year early on. He had 35 in 3 games. This kid is productive in that scheme. And Roydell Williams, I think he is better for Tennessee than the 2 previous receivers that they took in this draft. That was Brandon Jones out of Oklahoma, and they also took Courtney Roby from Indiana. I think this kid, Roydell Williams, has a chance to be special. Wasn't invited to the Combine workout. There were over 40 receivers at the Combine meeting. Roydell Williams was not invited, but he was at the Senior Bowl, a late addition. Roddy White got hurt on Monday. Roydell Williams came in on Tuesday, and the rest of that week, he was the 2nd best receiver behind only Mark Clayton. I think that's a great pick for the Tennessee Titans.
What happened to Jeff Huckabee, Arkansas, 5th round, Seattle Seahawks?
Next talking point is for the home crowd, the New York Jets. They did not have a pick in the 1st round, but with their first pick in the 2nd round, a little bit of a surprise.
With pick number 47, the New York Jets have selected from Ohio State kicker Mike Nugent.
Okay, a little bit of a what is that about, except talk about a guy who can help you win games. Consider last year, 24% of NFL games were decided by 3 points or fewer. We know what's happened in the past few Super Bowls, and this kid is unbelievably accurate from long distance, and he has that mentality, like an Adam Vinatieri of New England. Well, not a kicker, just a tough kid.
You said it right there. Adam Vinatieri has helped all the kickers anywhere in college now. They have to be looked at more because just what you said, the amount of games that are decided by 3 points or less. You have to be able to have a guy that can knock it through the uprights, and especially with what the Jets went away, what happened to them last year. And to boot, this guy can have the deep kickoffs. Again, we talk about field position. Deep kickoff translates to good field position
After effects,
defensively.
Mike, from what happened against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs. Look at Doug Bryant. He had a nice 2 years overall. I mean, you look at his numbers. They were not that bad. 17 and 19 last 2 years, from 40 to 49 yards, 51 of 61 overall in field goals. And you look at a guy who was effective, but he had those misses. And that's a rough conditions at Heinz Field, but he did have the misses. The one thing he's been ineffective at, Doug Bryant, is over 50 yards. I believe he's 1 of 6 the last 2 years. Mike Nugent has range up to 55, 56 yards. So I think the range that Nugent provides, and of course the after effects from what happened in the playoffs, always has that carryover effect. Who pays the price? A linebacker or defensive back doesn't, but a kicker or punter will. Remember, Sean Landeta did survive the Chicago Bear game and had a great career. Doug Bryant, I think, will have a chance, obviously, to continue on. But Mike Nugent, you have to believe, is a second-round pick, will be the Jets' kicker, and I think he'll do a heck of a job.
The Jets want to be more explosive on offense. New offensive coordinator Mike Heimerdinger, who came over from Tennessee, and some pretty cool new weapons. Lavernius Coles comes back.
Yeah, he comes back, but I still think the biggest question, if you want an explosive offense, is Chad Pennington. He had shoulder surgery. It was major shoulder surgery. They are optimistic, yes, that he'll start throwing in June, but you really don't know. And, so I still think the biggest question facing the Jets now going into the season is the recovery of Chad Pennington.
The Jets are saying that he probably won't throw until sometime in June. They do have quality backup Jay Fiedler, who came from Miami, so at least they feel comfortable. They're in pretty good position there.
Correct.
Big loss with the backup of Lamont Jordan, and the biggest loss was Jason Ferguson on that defensive line.
But Curtis Martin always has something up his sleeve, kind of redefines himself every year. Last year, the leading rusher. What does he have in store this year? We'll be back.
Hey there, and welcome to this ESPN News Update. For those of you watching us on ESPN2, the NFL Draft, thanks for joining us. He's Dari Noka. I'm Dave Holmes.
Yeah, good to have you along. We start this update, though, with the NBA as the Miami Heat, the team that so many picked to win the entire thing, starting their first-round series at home against the New Jersey Nets. This one just underway. Watch the instant effects of Shaq on that inside game of the Nets, taking the pass from Dwayne Wade, throwing it down 2-0. Then next play. Alley-oop me. Oh, Shaq, 4 early points. He got the start. He's healthy. Richard Jefferson for the Nets, not in uniform, will not play today. Right now, though, New Jersey up 12-9. Brian Scalabrine, 3 points for the Nets. New Jersey 0-3 against Miami this season, losing those 3 games by an average of 21.3 points per game.
Well, yesterday the offenses didn't show up. I guess actually Clemens and Mark Mulder did show up. Today, some hitting. Cardinals up 6-2 on the Astros. Albert Pujols, two-run home run. Reggie Sanders with an RBI triple. And now Scott Rowland has added an RBI single. 6-2. Bagwell, both RBIs for the Stros. But the story is Albert Pujols. 2-run jack. He has a 6-game hit streak. And you can see him. They all had nice trajectory. Batting .391 in that stretch. 2 home runs and 6 RBI. In his last 6 games, he's been elevating his game. Around the league, Yankees up 11-1. Derek Jeter hits a solo shot. Sidney Ponson had a no-no going into the 6th with the Orioles. It's since been broken up 7-1. Brad Wilkerson hits a double and a homer. Nationals on top. And Sean Casey, 3 for 4 with an RBI. Reds leading. Thanks to those of you joining us on ESPN2. Let's get you back out to Susie Colbert and the NFL Draft.
As we continue with round 6 of the 2005 NFL Draft from the Javits Center on the west side of New York City. Mel, in the 6th round here, what players do you think will have an impact?
Well, Susan, I think you look at this group now, you're seeing some defensive linemen come off the board, some offensive linemen, some wideouts. You look at Will Svitek, defensive lineman, now he'll be an offensive tackle or guard in the NFL. Joe Von Haig, always double team because he was the main entity at Vanderbilt. Better sophomore than junior year coming out early. And Chad Owens obviously will help out in the return game. Doesn't have ideal size, but in the return game, he can do a good job for you. So some interesting players there. I think if you look at the next grouping of players, you're going to see some guys like a C.J. Mosley, kid who was active, gives you a lot of effort on the defensive line. Dante Ridgeway, question was speed, but he was very productive and he has good hands. And Tab Perry, an interesting guy because you look at him, his weight was up. He had, of course, sit out 1 year, academically ineligible, so he came back this season. And I thought did a good job for UCLA working opposite Craig Bragg. You see that size, guy's weighed up. He was about 226 to 229 in that area. He goes about 6'2.5". Speed turned out to be a little bit better than people thought when he ran at 4.52 at the combine meeting. We had him here, a big physical presence. As I said, he had to sit out that 1 season. Had a good 2002 campaign, averaged 19.9 yards a catch, sat out 2003, came back this season, still averaged a respectable and an impressive 17 yards per catch. Did a real good job, as I said, added weight to his frame, utilized him in a lot of different ways because of that, and did a real nice job. Craig Bragg as well, who just went off the board, by the way, to the Green Bay Packers. So Bragg and Tab Perry not far in terms of remove from the board. 190 Tab Perry went, and Craig Bragg goes 195 to the Green Bay Packers. So the 2 UCLA Bruin wide receivers almost selected simultaneously in round 6. Craig Bragg, quite obviously not as big as Perry. Perry's one of the biggest wide receivers in this draft, outside of, of course, Mike Williams, and you look at Vincent Jackson. But, Craig Bragg goes 6'1", about 198. He ran about a 4.49 to 4.52, and you see him here. I like the body control and athleticism. He'll go get it. He's athletic, and he'll catch that low ball extremely well. He showed that the Senior Bowl here in coverage. He out-duels the defensive back, the corner for the football, and the kid made a lot of plays throughout his career. Doesn't miss a lot of time. He played through some injuries, a dangerous threat in the return game as well, which is an underrated part of a rookie or second-year player in the NFL. You see it here. This is against USC. All those great athletes. He goes all the way, outraces those Trojan special teams players to pay dirt. So he presents that dimension on special teams. Another wide receiver. Green Bay needs defense, but they went Terrence Murphy yesterday. They go Craig Bragg today. So obviously the Packers looking at the board, looking at value, not necessarily trying to fill all those holes on the defensive side, Mike.
And, you know, a lot of people thought when Green Bay made their first-round selections and they went with Aaron Rodgers, the thought was, should they have gone that route? If Brett Favre only has a year or two left, you want to build as well as you can around him to give him that chance at the Super Bowl. But I don't think there was going to be someone at 24 that was going to come in and have that immediate impact. So they decided to go for the backup and the heir apparent to Brett Favre. And you're right, Mel, they need defensive help. That's an area where they've brought in some guys. Some have panned out, some have not panned out. You have Brett Favre, you have great wide receivers, you have Amon Green, you have Bubba Franks at tight end. Defense has to be the key for the Green Bay Packers, especially in that division where you got some teams that have a good mixture of run and pass, but you have that defense that's got to step up if they're to get over the hump before Brett Favre retires.
But for a kid like Craig Bragg, we've heard this before from receivers who get to Green Bay. First, they have to get over that on the field with Brett Favre before they can really be a part of the program. What's your sense in terms of Favre and his future?
You know, I think Favre is year to year, although obviously every time we go another year, we say, well, this has got to be the year. And I think there is a sense that this may be the year. I mean, listen, there is a window closing there. They still have talent around him, but, you know, the Packers still need, for my money, need to address their offensive line. But just back to Aaron Rodgers real quick. You know, the one thing I heard going into this weekend was some general managers a little uncomfortable with his personality. You know, they didn't know what it was. But one of those general managers this morning said, after watching Aaron Rodgers, what he went through yesterday, how he handled it, what he said after falling as far as he did and then ended up with the Packers, told him that Aaron Rodgers is A1 in the character development, that he has got composure, and that he is, in fact, he said, what he went through yesterday, Saturday, is almost as tough as anything he'll go in the National Football League, and he passed with flying colors. So that was a good pickup right there with Aaron Rodgers, clearly Brett Favre's successor.
Well, the one thing that Green Bay has struggled with is defense. That has not been the problem for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Excellent defense, and then it's a question of where is Byron Leftwich?
Where is he in terms of, well, they did obviously fire Bill Musgrave, the offensive coordinator, who is a very good offensive coordinator, just wasn't a good fit. And what they did, they brought in Carl Smith. Carl Smith was out at Southern Cal, working with Norm Chow, working with the quarterbacks, and Matt Leinart. And Carl Smith has been in the NFL, been with Pete Carroll over in New England and what have you, in Cleveland. So the bottom line is that now Byron Leftwich has a guy who's about his same size, 6'6", and Matt Jones. And I know, listen, they've got big receivers. As you know, they got Ernest Wilfork, but Matt Jones, listen, the speed is real. Players who played against Matt Jones in the SEC will tell you, they watched film, they didn't think he was that fast. They get on the field with him, boom, he is an explosive type of athlete. I'm telling you, he's got great hands. Yes, there's an adjustment and what have you, but I think huge weapon for Byron Leftwich.
Quite a bit of an unknown as we bring in Jack Del Rio through our Coors Light video conferencing. Jack, let's start with that pick of Matt Jones. What was it about him that you just had to have?
Well, we just really were intrigued by the prospect of being able to add a playmaker like Matt, a guy that has tremendous speed, tremendous hands, and we just felt like the reward was so much greater than the risk that it was an easy pick for us.
A former quarterback transitions. What do you expect to use him at most?
Wide receiver primarily. I think, you know, coming in, we understand that he's got some slash capabilities. He's played quarterback. He probably is big enough to move into tight end, but we believe that, you know, right now, plug him in at wide receiver and he'll be tough to defend.
We've heard about Matt Jones and how much he loves the game. One of your goals, establishing that tough mentality. Where do you think you are?
Well, we're doing pretty well in terms of establishing a tough mentality. To be able to go on the road and beat Indy last year at their place, be able to go up into Green Bay in the cold and win there. We showed that we've had some toughness here and been able to build that. The character is there. We feel like our defense is pretty solid. we needed to add some playmakers, some guys that could help us score touchdowns, and we believe that Matt is one of those guys.
Fred Taylor missed a couple of games at the end of last season, arthroscopic surgery. How is he doing?
Well, Fred's doing well, and, you know, all of us, we hold our breath a little bit whenever Fred is nicked up, but we believe he'll make a complete recovery. We feel good about him opening training camp, being healthy, and going into this year having a great year for us.
In the 4th round, you selected a running back, Alvin Perlman. What do you expect from him?
Alvin will come in and add depth to us. He's a good, solid player. He played well for Algro there in Virginia. Special teams guy. He covers kicks. He's returned kicks. He carries the ball. He catches the ball. We feel like he can do a little bit of everything.
Jack, we appreciate the time. Good luck
Thanks,
the rest
Susie.
of the way.
All right, appreciate it.
Jacksonville, great along that defensive line.
Yeah.
What do you think the prospects are for them this year?
Well, you were right. It has to go on the offensive side of the ball. Now with Matt Jones in there, you heard him say possibly you could move him to tight end at some point because of his size, then where he could be that prototypical tight end. But for now, at wide receiver, Khalif Barnes, he's probably the most athletic of the 3 top tackles. Not the greatest technique in the world, but he has a really nice first step. He can engage. He can hang on. I think it's a nice pickup there. I really think they're going to need to focus on the offensive side of the ball. You know, as long as Fred Taylor can stay healthy, Jimmy Smith is getting a little older. Another reason why I think that the pick of Matt Jones was a pretty good one there, but there's no doubt for them to compete in this division. Defensively, they're stopping teams. Offensively, they need to score, and I think Byron Leftwich is going to be fantastic for them. You got Matt Jones is big. You got the kid Ernest Wolford, who made some big touchdown catches early in the season. All of a sudden, you have size, guys that can out-jump everybody else. So I think that offense is going to make a nice improvement.
They produced the fewest points in the AFC last year, so a little bit of work to do. But Byron Leftwich is the clutch quarterback. Won a lot of close games last year. The diehards are still here. Stick with us. Well, any way you slice it, you can't deny his skills. Terrell Owens, one of the best wide receivers in football, made a miraculous recovery from a broken leg to play in the Super Bowl. 9 catches, 122 yards, 13.6 average. Those are the positives, but with Terrell, it always seems that some negatives come. He has been talking about wanting a new contract. This was a quote recently from Terrell Owens. I did everything they asked me to do. I played every snap they allowed me to play. I made sure I was in the best shape possible. I wasn't the guy who got tired in the Super Bowl. And I think the end there is what we all have a problem with. You know what? Guy wants some more money. Money isn't always guaranteed to these players. That's one issue. But to take down your quarterback, Donovan McNabb, who really has been his closest friend on the team, that's the part that I think people have trouble with. Let's hit on our 3 and out presented by Hummer. Terrell Owens, does he deserve a new deal?
I would say no, and you can certainly ask for it. I think he made 2 mistakes. One, you disrespected Donovan McNabb, who's beloved in Philadelphia. The other is you talked about wanting to take care of your family. That's why you're doing this when everybody knows you made about $10 million last year in guaranteed money. The public doesn't want to hear that. I think there'll be a compromise. I don't think they'll redo the deal, but I think they'll guarantee some more of his contract to appease him.
I look at Terrell Owens and I say, okay, you got the deal you wanted. You became a Philadelphia Eagle. You didn't want to go to Baltimore. They worked that out to become a Philadelphia Eagle, and I think you sign a contract, you live by it. And I think that people say, well, the NFL has the upper hand here. That's the way it is. But when you take a shot at your quarterback and you criticize him and you say, okay, hey, I was the one who showed up. I was the one who didn't get tired, this and that. That's where I think he crossed the line on this. If he was going to keep it to the negotiations and to the money and to him only, then you can't say anything that's that bad about that. You expect that. Your agent, your player, they want to get the best deal possible. When you start including teammates in this equation, as he did with Donovan McNabb, that's where the problem was caused. But I myself think you sign a contract as a player, you live with that contract.
After 1 year, he's going to have to live with that contract. I don't think they're going to guarantee any portion of that contract. I think if he'd kept his mouth shut, maybe they would have worked something out. But remember, when he was going through this ordeal with Baltimore and San Francisco and Philadelphia, he did not have to sign this new contract with the Philadelphia Eagles. In fact, the NFL Players Association had sent him some warnings about signing this contract. And sure enough, a year later, he's not happy with it. I can tell you, the Eagles right now are not inclined to do anything We got to go at least another season here.
And how Terrell is now accepted in the locker room might have a lot to do with how Donovan reacts to this. What would you expect?
Well, you know what? He's Donovan McNabb. This guy is extremely intelligent, great sense of humor. He knows how to deal with T.O. And in fact, T.O. is in Philadelphia because of Donovan McNabb, not because of his physical ability, because Andy Reid knew that Donovan could deal with situations like this that popped up.
Andy Reid has a pretty good way of working things out with players.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, he's a great communicator. He knows how to squelch any problems and nip it in the bud, say, okay, let's end this and let's move on. So I think when push comes to shove and the football season begins and training camp opens, Andy Reid will have things squared away, at least from the personnel standpoint and the attitude of this football team going into July.
And while the coach needs to do that, players also have to respect the authority of the other players on that team and the leadership, and that's Donovan McNabb. He runs that team. He runs that clubhouse. He'll take the high road here. He'll make sure everything is worked out in that locker room between T.O., himself, and the rest of the team so they can get to that common goal, and that's not just to get to the Super Bowl, obviously. It's to win it now.
Or else Donovan will be throwing to wide receiver Reggie Brown, who the Eagles took in the Watch out, T.O. We'll be back as the 6th round continues from New York.
I'm Braylon Edwards.
Looking for Edwards. Touchdown!
And you're watching the 2005 NFL Draft on ESPN.
Welcome back to the 2005 NFL Draft, presented by Coors Light.
Well, the New York Football Jets, one of 4 teams that did not have a first-round pick this draft, but they certainly made it interesting anyway. They get the tight end Doug Jolly in a trade before the draft, and then they go unconventional with their first pick in the 2nd round. And joining us via the Coors Light video conferencing right now is the Jets general manager, Terry Bradway. Terry, what makes you so sure that a rookie kicker, Mike Nugent, taken in the 2nd round, can come in and handle the pressure of kicking in the NFL and in New York?
Well, Trey, we did a lot of research on Mike, and Mike Westhoff, our special teams coach, went out, spent a lot of time with him. The guy's kicked in big competition, in big games. He's kicked in inclement weather, which we get a lot at the Meadowlands, and we just felt that this is a solid player. He's an excellent athlete. He's a team captain, which is very unusual for a kicker to be a team captain, but he's our kind of guy, and we look forward to him having a lot of success here at the Jets.
How much did the way your season ended in Pittsburgh with Doug Bryan missing not 1 but 2 chances to win that playoff game in Pittsburgh affect you guys making this decision?
Well, I don't think that totally went into it, Trey. I think it's easy for fans and everybody to look at it like that. Doug did a good job for us here. But we look at Mike, and Mike's got a history of making big kicks, long kicks. He's got a stronger leg. And so it was an opportunity for us to get a player that was high on our board. We evaluated him as a 2nd-round kicker from the start. We were a little bit concerned that some teams may try to jump and get ahead of us, but we were fortunate that at 47 he was there. And once again, I think Mike Westhoff does such a great job, identified this player, and we think he'll be successful for us.
Terry, what's the status of defensive end John Abraham? Will he be a Jet when the season starts, or are we still trying to actively trade him?
No, we fully expect John to be here in 2005. He's got the franchise tag, and hopefully we'll be able to get things worked out. You know, John's been a good player for us here now for 5 years, and we expect to have him back.
Maybe the biggest concern for you, Terry, going into 2005 is the health of your quarterback, Chad Pennington, coming back from the surgery. What's the status on him? Any concerns about him being ready to go when the season starts?
No, Trey, he's really worked hard. He's about 10 weeks out now, and he's got rotation. He won't start throwing for a while, but we fully expect him to be back and throwing when training camp starts.
And he's certainly happy he'll be throwing to Lavernius Coles again. Terry, thanks very much. Best of luck the rest of draft day.
Thank you, Trey.
Guys, let's talk about the New York Jets. A very interesting team. Obviously, the New England Patriots have been the dominant team in the AFC East for a while, but with the moves the Jets have made, getting Doug Jolly to begin with, getting what we think will be a better kicker, and the losses the Patriots have suffered over this offseason, is the gap between the Patriots and the Jets shrinking?
Oh, I believe so, and I think you really do have to include Doug Jolly into this conversation, you know, making the trade to get Doug Jolly from the Oakland Raiders. And, you know, when you're a quarterback like Chad Pennington, who doesn't have the big gun kind of arm, you like to work the inner area of the field, the hash area. The tight end, if you control the hash area, you're in good shape. Now, I know Merrill loves this. My former quarterback coach and the father of the modern-day modern-day passing game. Sid Gilman used to always say, if you control the hash area of the football field, you control the entire field. We're having a tight end now, and Doug Jolly will certainly open things up on the outside. Lavernius Cole's back, a tough guy, catch the ball inside. I like the moves they're making.
That would make him the last genetic link to the father of the pass.
And I'll take that.
Right? And
I'll take that, right.
You know, first of all, we got to realize this, that everything to this point is purely paperwork. I mean, all these trades, all these picks, it's all paperwork. How does the chemistry come together? Are the Jets close? I think they're very close, just based on what they did last year in learning how to win playoff games. Had they won the Pittsburgh game, obviously would have been against the New England Patriots. So I think that was their greatest growing pain, not necessarily all of these changes yet until they come together. And I think we can't keep putting the Patriots under the bus because no matter who they lose or who goes away,
no one's doing that. No one's putting the Patriots under the bus. But no, let's face history here. No team has ever won 3 straight Super Bowls, and there's a reason for that. It's a war of attrition. The Patriots have played more games now over the last 4 years than any other team in the NFL, and they've had more losses on the coaching staff and the playing staff this year than ever before in their tenure.
But I would just say this one thing. When free agency started, and the salary cap was in place, nobody in New York set, on this set, in any set in the National Football League, did we ever think a team would be able to win back-to-back Super Bowls again. Nobody said that. Everybody said that will never happen again.
No, wait, no one's never said never. There's a chance if you win it one time, you always got a chance.
It's much less likely.
I think the Delta's been shrunk in this. I really do. I think.
By the way, your word of the weekend is Delta.
I like
so
that.
You know,
Thank you.
He doesn't even know what it means.
We'll talk about that during the break. And do not forget new offensive coordinator Mike Heimerdinger when you mentioned opening it
now
up.
Thank you
very much. Now we mentioned Mike Westhoff earlier, Heimerdinger. I like it.
Someone's got to bring sanity to this conversation. It's what we do. All right, stay with us. The draft continues here on ESPN 2005. Still gems out there to be found. We'll keep mining for them. Stay with us.
Working our way through the 6th round of the 2005 NFL Draft with our Kawasaki trade recap. Luke McCown, quarterback from the Browns, traded to Tampa Bay. The Browns just used that pick on Andrew Hoffman, defensive tackle from Virginia. And that leads us into the last 10 picks. Who jumps out here, Mel?
When you look at it, Susie, you're getting some players coming off the board now, some of which you projected a little higher than this in the draft in terms of where they were ranked going in. And I think you look at a guy like Chris Myers, the versatility to play along that offensive line virtually at any spot, the kind of offensive line that doesn't have great size. Well, Denver Broncos don't require that in their offensive lineman. Geisinger played tackle. He'll be a guard in the NFL, limited in pass protection with the short arms and tackle. Will move inside with the Buffalo Bills. And Joel Dreesen can catch the football, showed a lot of skills early in his career, kind of leveled off late. I think you look at some other guys, I think who have a chance to maybe make their mark because of speed is DeAndre Cobb on special teams. He made a lot of big plays there. Right after DeAndre Cobb went another Spartan. Dave Rayner, the big leg kickoff should be excellent. Remember, they have Vanderjagt there. If they want improvement in the kickoff department, Rayner can do that. He has a stronger leg than Mike Nugent, but the accuracy is where he needs to improve. Andrew Hoffman will be a nose tackle in that 3-4. He did it for Al Groh in that scheme. And a guy I think is interesting, Chris Kemoeatu from Utah. We talked about Alex Smith going #1. Well, a guy who helped to key the success of Alex Smith was a guard like Kemoeatu. Did a good job in pass protection. You look at that frame, 6'3½", 340 to 345 pounds. You watch him here, number 68. This kid is aggressive. He's got that mean streak. He's got that defensive mentality. And I even talked to some NFL personnel people that said, hey, don't be surprised if he goes to the right team that he could be a nose tackle. Well, the Pittsburgh Steelers, you never know if they will look at him on that side of the ball because he seems like, of course, Make Kemoeatu with the Baltimore Ravens doing the job on their defensive line as an undrafted free agent a few years ago. And here's Chris again in that offense. You got to run block, you got to get after it, you got to also pass protect. So a kid that comes in with dual versatility could be an offensive guard, or if the Steelers see fit, they more want to experiment with him or at the nose tackle spot in their 3-4 defense. Mike.
And we think of tough players in Pittsburgh. This kid got suspended twice for kicking opponents. Now, I don't condone that, gang.
Yes,
but coaches are going to love that. He's got some toughness about him there.
Don't get him mad.
We are a long way from the top of your big board. At the top, USC receiver Mike Williams went 10th overall to Detroit. oh, that's a loaded receiving core. How long do you think before he really makes it in the NFL?
Susie, I thought it could be right away. I think he's really ready. I think it may take a little bit of time to settle in. Remember, even when he came out of high school to college, wasn't heavily recruited, dropped some balls first 2 games, and from that point on, he just dominated. Now he's going to have some help there. Charles Rogers is really a key. He needs to stay healthy. You have Roy Williams, who could be spectacular, and you watch Mike Williams make catch after catch. I mean, he's talking about 95 receptions 2 years ago. Of course, sat out this past season. The hands, the long arms, the wingspan. He's 6'5". He plays like he's 6'8". Kid that may not have 4.4 speed, but he ran a 4.56 at 6'5", 230. That's plenty good enough. I was a little surprised that Detroit went that route. I thought if he got down that far, that maybe he'd end up at 12 to San Diego, but the Lions didn't go defense. They went probably with the best player on their board and didn't worry about what position it was. They said, hey, we have Rodgers. He had some injury problems. We have a security now that if that happens again, we have the fallback of Mike Williams, or we have 3 guys, all of which present major size advantages to the defensive backs trying to match up.
And we haven't seen Mike Williams play football in 15 months. He followed Maurice Claret's lead, was declared ineligible by the NFL, sat out for a year, but he vowed to make the best of that year. One of the ways he did that was working on his fitness, and he hooked up with Chris Carter at Chris Carter's Fast Camp, working on that fitness. Chris Carter teaching him all the different things about football. Say it all comes down to playing the game, route running, reading. Mike Williams spent several weeks on and off there. Earlier today, I spoke to Chris Carter. Chris, how did you and Mike Williams hook up?
Well, we originally hooked up with, we have a mutual friend. When Mike was in school at USC before he declared that he wanted to come into the draft. So I was able to sit there and talk to him about how he could get better, how he could prepare for his junior year, and then subsequently the Claret situation. I knew Claret. It was very, very familiar with Ohio State. So all those things coming together really formed the relationship that we have.
When you first saw him on the field, what did you think of his skills?
I was always wondering what people were questioning. You know, the one thing about the NFL draft, there's so many experts and so many people, so many prognosticators that I'm wondering, this guy is 3 inches taller than me. He probably had a 4 or 5 inch higher vertical leap than me, and he's faster than I ever was. So what's the question about him playing in the NFL? So for me, I just thought he was an unbelievable specimen.
And what have you worked on with him?
Really on explosion and separation. How he can run into his routes and out of his routes just as quick, that he can utilize the good speed that he's had. He does not have great speed, but the one thing that I believe is more important than speed as a receiver is overall quickness. So that's what we've been working on and trying to explode away from defenders.
You can work on the quickness, but what about simulating the true hits? He hasn't played football in 15 months.
Well, I don't think at his age it's going to really make that much difference. After you go through 4 or 5 mini camps, I believe he'll be right back in the swing of things. And I was pleasantly surprised by the type of shape that he was in when he was at my facility. So I don't think that'll be a problem, especially, for a kid, it's not going to be a problem at all.
Beyond the on the field, what kind of a guy is he?
You know, he is a guy that is hard to get to know, but once you get to know him, he has an unbelievable big heart, very kind, kind of soft-spoken, and as an athlete, sometimes it becomes what people think. It sends the wrong message as if you're a little standoffish, but he doesn't have a lot of friends. It's not because he doesn't want a lot of friends, but he is naturally just a quiet person. So I think that once he gets into the pro ranks and starts to understand things, like, for me, initially it was a little hard, but, I talked so much trash to him and did so many things to him that he wanted to choke me at the end, so he opened up. So I think people, especially the people in Detroit, they are going to be surprised by Mike Williams and who he is as a person.
Chris, thanks for spending some time with us.
All right, thank you, Susie.
And Williams has said that he kind of wants to bring back a little of that old school, more like a Barry Sanders type. And then the opposite end of the spectrum is the #1 receiver taken overall, Braylon Edwards, who went to Cleveland. He's known for his flash, and he's got football in his blood. His dad, Stanley, played in the NFL, and of course, he also played at Michigan. But while he followed in his father's footsteps in football, it was his mom who always told him he was destined for something special.
Braylon Edwards, wide receiver.
He's my boy. He's a mama's boy. He's like, for a long time, no one could chastise him, no one could punish him. You know, I didn't want to raise him the old school way like my mother raised me, so I never thought he did anything wrong.
You know how mothers are, they're very worried. You know, they want their sons to be overly padded, overly protected. They don't want anything to happen to him. And she's still that way to this day.
This is Braylon last year at Michigan, and I knew that he was not going to go out losing to Michigan State, which is a big rival.
Michigan, to win this game, will have to have one of the great comebacks in storied history.
I'm like thinking, something's got to happen. He's got to do something. And then he took the game over.
He goes up!
Looking for Edwards. Touchdown!
Spectacular touchdown! Michigan wins! I just told myself, brother, it's time to make a play. It was truly one of those things where you find out what a team is about. That was truly what it means to go to college and play at University of Michigan.
A feeling that I would never, ever forget. Being a parent, watching your son just take the whole game on his back and just win it. In my eyes, Braylon has grown quite a bit. I mean, he's no longer the spoiled little boy. He's now a man handling his business.
My mother's been a very significant help in the maturation process. She wanted me to be the best at it and wanted me to understand the roads that it took to get there, the discipline, the work, the focus, the concentration. I am where I am today because of her, and you know, the things that she consistently instills into me.
She and Dad helped out with this. He shattered virtually all of Michigan's receiving records, receptions, touchdowns, receiving yards. But maybe most importantly is during his time at Michigan, he really learned the meaning of team. When he got there, it was me, and when he left, it was we.
And that's what it has to be in the NFL. It has to be about team. What can you do to help your team? But the way he's going to help his team is going to be big plays. This is what he does. He does a great job on the field, not just in running routes and catching the ball, but faking as well. Here, you're going to see him sell the short route. Looking like he's going to break. Look like the break in. The defensive back looks back at the quarterback thinking the ball's coming. An easy shot down the field. A good job of selling the short route. Here, he sells it deep. Look at him keep running off the defensive back like he's going deep, then cuts it and creates space between he and the defensive back. There's going to be times in the NFL when he just flat out has to go after the ball. And in those situations, I like what he does. You're just going to have to take it from the defensive back. And then, again, taking it from the defensive back. Sometimes it's not going to be the perfect pass. Then in the red zone, here you go. Someone's got to make a play. Braylon Edwards is a guy that is able to make that play. How's he going to fit into that offense? Now, Trento for the quarterback. Lee Suggs is going to have to be the man carrying the ball, really kind of untested, carrying the load all the way. Dennis Northcutt and Antonio Bryant are the receivers, good receivers. I don't know if they're number ones. Braylon Edwards is going to be the number one guy. He's going to have to be the playmaker for this team, and he can do that.
Suggs could get a little assist. Ruben Drones now there in Cleveland as well, and this is what they did in the draft.
Well, you look at Brodney Poole. He had the great year 2 seasons ago. This year, they had the injury to Antonio Perkins. They had a JUCO kid coming in. Not a lot of continuity in that secondary, and he was really trying to cover up some of the mistakes of his teammates. Charlie Fry, you look at, throws some wobbly balls, but he's a gamer. Everybody says, well, in Cleveland, can he get it done? Well, Brian Sipe did, so did Bernie Kosar, without phenomenal arm strength. And Antonio Perkins, I just mentioned, the teammate of Brodney Poole, a corner/brilliant punt returner. And, of course, Andrew Hoffman in a 3-4 for Al Groh did a good job on the nose. But he has to do the same for Romeo Crennel.
They have not drafted a Pro Bowl player since their return to the NFL in the Romeo Crennel era. They better hope that changes if they hope to have success. We'll be back from New York.
Hands, elusive.
Looking for Edwards.
Quickness.
Touchdown!
To prepare for this day, I've worked 24 hours a day, every day.
ESPN's exclusive coverage of the NFL Draft is presented by Coors Light, the official beer sponsor of the NFL. And in part by the all-new midsize H3 in dealerships soon.
Just one pick away from completing round 6 here at the NFL Draft. One of the last players to go we'll see is Rob Petiti. Not much expected out of high school then. As a freshman, held Dwight Freeney without a sack for the first time in 15 games. That'll get you drafted.
It will, but his weight really, Susie, got up around 360. He's got to get that weight down. If he does, he has a chance. And I think you look at a guy like Justin Berrio, we saw previously at Ball State, a kid who's got a lot of ability. Justin Berrio was a heck of a pick for the Dallas Cowboys. You talk about Bill Parcells restructuring a defense. Berrio had 125 tackles last season, 21 in one game against Northern Illinois. I really like this kid. I thought he could have been a third-round pick, and nobody could have argued. And Ryan Riddle is one of those hybrids. Good pass rusher off the edge, did a great job, great motor, good quickness. I think Ryan Riddle to Oakland. I questioned a lot of Oakland's picks early on, but I do like this pick of Ryan Riddle at this stage of the 6th round.
One of the things you hear about a lot when you talk to scouts and coaches, and it's kind of a surprising thing, how much do players really love to play football? It's something that seems obvious, not always. For that, we head to Andrea Kramer, who has a roundtable of players to discuss. Andrea?
Thanks a lot, Suze. Well, obviously, the Miami Dolphins would not have been forced, if you will, to use the #2 pick in the draft, selecting running back Ronnie Brown, if it wasn't for the absence of Ricky Williams, who retired the week before, walked away from football the week before training camp last year, left the franchise in a lurch, and arguably cost Dave Wannstedt his job in Miami. And the one thing that players, everybody, fans, the media, was incredulous about is that he didn't want to play football. He admitted it. He told me a number of times, I don't love football, which brings up the issue. How many players in the league do you think love to play the game, really have passion to play the game?
I think there's a high percentage of guys in the NFL that like to play the game. Sometimes you get lost in the fact that it's a job, and there's a lot of other things that go on off the field. There's a lot of politics that go on in the locker room with the coaches, mind games or whatnot. But when you cross that line, the majority of the guys like to play the game. It's too hard in August to walk out there twice a day, and it's 105-degree heat. It's just something that's too hard to do if you don't like to do it. And that's why, if Ricky Williams wants to walk, if anybody wants to walk away from the game, fine. Maybe don't do it the day before you're going to training camp. Do it
the week before.
Before the draft, before free agency. Let the guys know, hey, this isn't for me anymore. I'm going to hang them up. And then there's nothing wrong with walking away from the game, but it's all about timing.
As mad as everybody was at Ricky for bailing at the last minute like that, believe me, as players and as teammates, you do not want a guy in your huddle that doesn't want to play. You do not want, so I know as a quarterback, I don't want a running back protecting for me if he doesn't want to be there, if he doesn't have love for the game, because he may just give you half effort or not prepare the way he's supposed to play. And then all of a sudden,
how many players really do you think?
I think the vast majority of guys have a passion to play. But I think there's a lot of guys out there. There's a number of guys that play strictly for the money. And even though the money is really good, at some point in time, you can only play for money for so long.
How can you tell? How do you know who those guys are?
You can tell a guy as soon as he comes in the locker room, or you can tell a guy in the off-season program, or you can tell a guy after a couple days at training camp. You can just see by their energy level, by the way they play. There's also a reason guys want to play is a fear. That some guys don't know how to do anything other than play football. So the fear of what am I going to do if I'm not playing football? What job am I going to have? Even though you have a college degree, what am I going to go and do as another profession if I'm not playing football? But for the majority of guys, if you don't have the passion, you can find out right away. And if you have a guy come into your locker room that doesn't have passion, you try and get to that guy as soon as you can, because if he clings on to the wrong people, then he's going the wrong way. And you just try and grab as many good guys as you can and get them around and make sure you're giving as positive an influence as possible.
But how can you rekindle the passion?
Well, it's easy. You go out and a lot of problems are solved by winning. Obviously, when you're 6-10 or 5-11,
but anybody can be a front runner, though.
That's what I'm saying. But to be able to go out and improve your team, improve yourself, and take care of those guys who come in the locker room and they're that cancer. They're the guys who say, you know what, I can't believe they drafted this guy at my position. I'm done. These guys aren't telling me the truth, blah, blah, blah. Those are the guys that are the cancer. Those are the guys you want to get rid of. There's two type of guys in the NFL. There's one guy who believes it's his privilege to be in the NFL. It's not something that you're born to do. It's something that you're gifted to do. And then there's another guy who says it's my right to play in the NFL.
How much do you
Nobody
notice?
has a right.
How much do you notice after a game? You're on a bus or you're on the team plane. How much do you notice the guys that look despondent, look down, and the guys that are just hanging out or joking? Or how much does that resonate?
Those are the things that drive you the most crazy. When you get on after a loss and you see guys not responding the way they should, not that they have to sit there and mourn and have their head down and everything else. You can have a conversation with a teammate, but to be laughing and joking and say, hey, no big deal. Hey, we got another game. I'm picking up my paycheck Monday and we'll be ready to go. That drives you insane. And
it just really hurts when you have a large group of guys, and that's why a team is so important and why they place such an emphasis, and such an emphasis has been placed on what New England's been able to do. It is so important to have everybody together, because if you have any phase of your game or any phase of your team splitting off and going a different direction, it won't all come together for you.
Good leadership on a team will take care of that every time. That's what you need. You need to have leadership on a team that says, hey, when the guys get in a bus or on the plane, hey, you know, if you're joking around, cut it out. This is business. This is winning. And good leadership will take care of that every time.
You know, and it's interesting that you mentioned New England, because there's the feeling that whether or not a prospect, a draft prospect, has passion for the game is an intangible. In New England, for example, they believe everything is tangible. You talk to people, you talk to the prospects, you get to know them, you interview them, and you can figure out exactly who does have the passion for the game. The NFL draft rolls on, heading into round 7, finishing up. Please stay with us. Lots more to come.
About 47 picks to go in this year's draft. Who might you find in the 7th round? Jake Scott had 2 interceptions and was named MVP of Super Bowl VII with the Dolphins. Harold Carmichael finished in the top 10 in touchdowns 8 times in his 14-year career. Shannon Sharp retired last year as the NFL's career leader in receptions and yards for tight ends. 2-time Pro Bowl selection Leon Lett won 3 Super Bowl titles with the Cowboys. Jamal Anderson led the Falcons to Super Bowl 33 and was named to the Pro Bowl that same season. And checking in on the last 5 players picked, and one of them that jumps off the board, Derek Anderson, the quarterback out of Oregon State to Baltimore.
You're right, Susie. You look at Derek Anderson, and when he came in there, of course, other interesting, Kevin Bickerson to Miami. You see Michigan State up there. Nick Saban, coach at Michigan State, probably had a hand in the recruiting process for Kevin Bickerson, so that knowledge of a player helpful there. Look at Derek Anderson. Look at that size. Vinny Testaverde-like is the way he looked like coming out of high school. When he came out of the prep ranks, great basketball player, great quarterback. Remember talking to Dennis Erickson, interviewed Dennis Erickson then and said, well, what about redshirting Derek Anderson? Dennis Erickson said no, because I think he's going to probably leave after 3 years to go to the NFL. He's going to be maybe the #1 pick or a first-round pick. He's not going to hang around. Why waste a redshirt year? So this kid had big expectations. Everybody thought he'd be a phenomenal quarterback. He had his moments, but complete percentage as a freshman was 41.5%. As a sophomore, 47%. As a junior, 51.2%. And even this past year, 29 touchdown passes, 17 interceptions, and a completion percentage of 54.2%. He's got some pure passing skills, like a Vinny Testaverde, but makes some bad decisions. Completion percentage is not what you want. Neither is a touchdown-interception ratio.
But he does have physical skills, and at this point in the draft, why not a guy who's got those physical skills? And remember, the Baltimore Ravens, I said make or break year for Kyle Bowler. I really believe that. Jim Fossil, now the offensive coordinator. Interesting, Rick Neuheisel, now the quarterback coach for the Ravens. No doubt that Rick Neuheisel tried to recruit Derek Anderson when he was at the University of Washington. And I just believe that if Bowler trips and falls with all the weapons they've gotten around him, they're going to have to develop another quarterback. Anderson at least will get a chance to develop.
Developing quarterbacks also an issue for Nick Saban in Miami. A.J. Feely has the job. They brought in Gus Frerotte, who's more familiar with the Scott Linehan system. He's the new offensive coordinator. But it's A.J.'s job to lose. Does he last?
Well, listen, Frerotte knows the system better. So I kind of feel like Frerotte might steal this job, and they'll get another quarterback down the line. But this one thing about Nick Saban and the Miami Dolphins, he's not just a defensive coach. And I've always thought, when he was at LSU or Michigan State, he was an NFL coach that took the NFL game to the collegiate level, not the vice versa. I think this transition for Nick Saban is going to be a very smooth one. And he's not just a defensive coach. Hey, he hired Scott Linehan, who's an attack through the air mentality as his offensive coordinator, put together a great coaching staff. And I know he has a tough task ahead of him, but I believe eventually it will turn out quite successful.
You look at, college coaches that have moved on to the NFL and the success or lack of success, I would say. And now we'll see what happens with Nick Saban, who, in taking off Miami, I know you say he's a defensive coach, but, well, you know what? He's a defensive coach. They picked up 9 players in the offseason, 6 of them on the defensive side of the ball. 2 of their first 3 after Ronnie Brown. The next 2 picks were defensive players, an end in Roth and a lineman in Channing Crowder, I believe. So he's gone the defensive side of the ball. That's an area where they were starting to age on defense, need to get a little bit of size on defense to be able to compete in that division.
And he learned in the NFL in Cleveland with Bill Belichick. People want to compare them. he might actually be a little more intense than Bill Belichick.
I'll tell you, he has a nick. I'll tell you, talk about knowledge of the game of football. Nobody can surpass him in that area. He's got a brilliant football mind. And I'll tell you talk about players that he went after, or players he knew a lot about. Ronnie Brown, Matt Roth, Channing Crowder, and of course Travis Daniels, who he recruited and he coached. And to get him in the 4th round, Travis Daniels, when he worked out 3 weeks ago, ran a 4.45. Forget that 4.65 you may see associated with his name. Ran a lot better, as did Corey Webster's teammate. Webster went 2nd round to the New York Giants. Anthony Alabi, the offensive tackle. Of course, Kevin Vickerson, who he knows because he was in the recruiting process for Vickerson when Nick was head coach at Michigan State.
Real quick, you talk about toughness and how tough a coach he is. Corey Webster, already quoted here in New York, who played for Saban at LSU, going to the Giants saying, talking about Coughlin's toughness. He said, I played for Nick Saban. Are you kidding me? I said, this isn't going to be difficult for me. Nick Saban, a very tough coach.
And he's a great teacher. There's not a position on the team he does not understand technique-wise or any psychologically. This guy understands every facet of the game.
Well, within that division, battling Miami will be the Buffalo Bills. Head coach Mike Mularkey joins us by our Coors Light video conferencing. Mike, what was day 1 of the draft like for you?
It was a long day, I have to admit. You know, sitting there waiting for that pick, but you know, we had plenty to do. We were trying to keep busy.
How would you describe the progress of your quarterback, J.P. Lossman?
I'll tell you, JP, you know, just being here for the year that he's been here, you know, getting a chance to work within the system, you know, really having a 1st-round pick around for a year has been a bonus for him. But, you know, he got some opportunities not only in the preseason games last year, but he got some chances during the regular season where he got some snaps to me that I thought were critical, whether they were in meaningless games or not. Anytime you can get the play call from the sideline, call it in the huddle, execute the cadence, and go through all the mechanics of the play, that every play to me is a bonus for experience. And you know, that was big. And then what he's done this offseason with his participation, really from late January on, he has been a steady really student here, trying to get better and do all the things it takes to be a good quarterback at this level.
What do you expect to happen with running back Travis Henry?
Well, we're still, you know, that's still in the works. You know, it did not pan out like we had hoped yesterday, and we're still trying to do something with Travis.
Mike, thanks, and we'll look forward to seeing you later this season.
Okay, Susie.
We continue here from New York City, wrapping up the 2005 NFL Draft. The 7th round continues.
2005 NFL Draft on ESPN.
Welcome back to New York, the 2005 NFL Draft. Closing in on conclusion. The highlights so far, courtesy of our Mazda Draft Track. Many, many hours ago, San Francisco chose quarterback Alex Smith with the #1 pick overall. One of the biggest shockers of day 1, the last pick of the day in the 3rd round, as the Broncos picked running back Maurice Clarett. Hasn't played in 2 years. And then many questions about quarterback Adrian McPherson, limited time at FSU, to the Saints in the 5th round. We'll be back with more of the 7th round in just a minute.
We continue to work our way through the 7th and final round of the 2005 NFL Draft. And one of the teams that has been the busiest all draft weekend would be the Philadelphia Eagles. Boatloads of picks. And joining us now on the Coors Light video conferencing is the Eagles head coach, Andy Reid. Andy, was it almost too much of a good thing? Did you guys have too many picks to deal with?
I'll tell you what, Trey, you can never have too many.
But you're a pretty good team that went to the Super Bowl and looks stocked on both sides of the ball. You can't have all these guys make the team, can you?
Well, they might not all make the team, but they'll make it competitive during training camp and these mini camps.
Well, let's move ahead to a guy that I'm fairly certain will be on the team, at least through training camp and mini camp, and that has been wideout Terrell Owens. A lot of discussion about him wanting a new contract. What can you tell us about the situation with the Eagles and T.O.? Where does it stand?
And you guys told me we were going to talk about the draft.
Well, we'll do both of those things. I promise you we will do both of those things, but what's the latest on T.O. And the situation with the new contract?
Well, everything's kind of in limbo right now. We've focused on the draft the last couple weeks here, so we'll see what happens in the near future.
Were you upset by the things that he said specifically about Donovan McNabb?
Well, I don't think he directly related those towards Donovan. I know T.O. and I know how much he respects Donovan McNabb, so I didn't take it that way. I don't think Donovan took it that way. I think things were said about T.O. during the game that he was a little bit tired, and I think he was just justifying that he wasn't.
Is there any concerns that this can't be worked out with T.O. and the organization?
Well, we'll see how things go here in the near future. That's, it'll be an important step there.
He clearly was the darling of the city last season. How has the city of Philadelphia reacted to his latest demand for a new contract?
Well, I don't know. You'll have to ask the mayor of the city that's sitting right next to me.
There you go, Andy. Well, that's a very good point. Ron Jaworski. All right, well, Ron, the mayor, said that he thought the city had turned. Do you agree with that assessment? Turned against T.O. a little bit?
Well, I never leave this building. I wouldn't know, to be honest with you.
That means you're doing your job. Let's talk a little bit about the draft picks now. Mike Patterson, the defensive tackle you picked up from USC. What do you like about him and why?
Well, he's an active player, and he disrupts the line of scrimmage, and that's what we like from our defensive linemen. And, in the pass game, he gives you a little bit of rush right there. Matter of fact, he gives you a lot of rush. And then in the run game, he's so active on the other side of the line of scrimmage. Things that Tommy Brazier really preaches, along with Jim Johnson.
Does the drafting of Mike Patterson say anything about the future of Corey Simon with your football team?
Well, we didn't pick Mike Patterson because of that. We picked Mike Patterson because he's a good football player, and we're always looking to strengthen our lines, and we made sure that we did that with our defensive line.
Andy, what's the one thing you want to take out of this draft, the one place you want to improve your team the most?
Well, it's overall. You've got to draft for future players and depth and guys that maybe can come in and work into rotations this year, and I think we've done that.
Andy, thanks very much, and best of luck working with all these picks down the road.
All right, guys, I appreciate it.
Andy Reid joining us via the Coors Light video conferencing, and Andy obviously didn't really want to talk about the terrible
he's now mad at you.
Well,
I think he might not be as mad at me now as he is you right now.
Trust me, they're all still very mad at you. But the Terrell Owens situation, as much as Andy didn't want to talk about it, is going to be hanging over this team, this city, this organization, Ron, until it comes to a conclusion one way or the other. It has to be dealt with.
Oh, I believe it. I believe it'll linger for a long time, probably through minicamp, probably through training camp and into the regular season. It seems T.O. is adamant about getting a new contract. I believe the Eagles will remain adamant about not giving him a new contract. The Eagles have always been very consistent in what they do in the front office. If they cave into T.O., you're going to have 20 guys at Joe Banner or Jeffrey Lurie's door.
And one of the advantages, I think the Philadelphia Eagle fan is easy to forgive and move on. I'm joking with that.
Yeah,
they do not forgive.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're the last guy.
They do not forgive and move on very much. But when you look at Philadelphia, I mean, if there's one area, off camera, Andy was like, the only way I'm going to like the Philadelphia offense if they run 60%. And that's not true. I got great respect for Andy Reid, especially how he manages offense, how he calls plays. But I think a balance to their offense, somebody who can take the load off of Donovan McNabb at times so he doesn't have to carry the load, so he doesn't have to be perfect, especially in the championship games. If you had some sense of balance in your offense, I think the Eagles would be even that much tougher in the, when they get to those championship games and in the regular season.
But they do get a Ryan Moats, a very versatile back. He can pound it inside, but he is more of a receiver.
Hard, but he's a college guy, and we don't know if he transitions to the NFL quite yet.
And with 13 players, they're going to get the added depth to this football team. J.R. Reed, the safety, had a serious injury this offseason. I spoke to Andy Reid this morning. He said, hey, we need to get another free safety if he doesn't return. So they end up getting Sean Considine with, right in the 4th round. He said, hey, we're going to need to get some pass rusher, offensive linemen. They got the guys they wanted. Tom Hecker, Jason Light, their personnel department did a terrific job. When you got 13 picks, you got to work a heck of a lot more than the guys with 4 or 5.
Yeah, and I really think if they had a tackle-to-tackle guy, that would make Westbrook even more explosive and more dynamic.
Well, that's the big question for the Eagles besides T.O. Will they make a play at one of the veteran running backs that still could be available? We shall see. Stay with us. We are going to come back to wrap up the 2005 NFL Draft. Yes, we still have to deal with Mr. Irrelevant. A few more picks to get there, but that's coming up. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the 2005 NFL Draft, presented by Coors Light.
About 30 picks to go in the 7th round. These guys enter the league with a big chip on their shoulder and a lot to prove now.
Nehemiah Broughton out of the Citadel, big back, did a great job against a lower level of competition. Did go to the Senior Bowl. I thought his hands, his ability to catch the football, something he needs to work on. And Roderick Wilson had a big year, a lot of productivity, a lot of tackles. And he's the kind of linebacker that Lovie Smith likes. He's not that big, but he's fast and he can run to the football. Jay Ratliff at Auburn has the versatility to play inside or outside. Of course, when you project him into a 3-4, obviously, you're looking at a guy that can hold up against the run and occupy. The blockers freeing up those linebackers to make plays. You go to the next grouping, and I tell you, you see players out there that have versatility to play 2 different positions. We talked about how important special teams is, and you look at a guy like Davin Holly and Adrian Ward, guys that could be nickel dime backs, help out on special teams. Kevin Vickerson, as we said, going to Nick Saban, had obviously a little bit to say about Kevin Vickerson when he came to Michigan State in that recruiting process. And of course, John Dunn, offensive tackle at Virginia Tech, the big kid who has the physical skills if he can become more consistent. Adrian Ward, only shot will be as probably a dime back in the NFL. So if you look at linemen, and they usually drop. Remember Joe Jacoby, who I think could be a Hall of Famer out of Louisville, went to the Washington Redskins as an undrafted free agent. Pete McMahon, former walk-on at Iowa. You watch this kid, I tell you what, he's got size, he's got versatility, he's played right tackle, and he's played guard. He's not one of those overly gifted athletes. He's not the kind of guy in terms of a workout or measurables you're going to get excited about, but on the field on game day, it's a guy who went up against Erasmus James, up against some very good defensive ends during his career and did a heck of a job. So he's experienced in that area. Kirk Ferentz, and Mike, you know Kirk. Kirk is a brilliant teacher of offensive linemen.
And a lot of these guys come into Iowa as tight ends, and they end up putting on the weight and going to the line. Here's another guy, I agree with you, a little stiff, not very athletic, but, you know, the versatility, played guard and tackle, is a guy that can get in your way and will start to learn some technique.
Of course, Kirk Ferentz, you're talking about his NFL experience. Head coach at Iowa, he's done a great job there. That Hawkeye program has not missed a beat. Hayden Fry got it going, built it up, did a phenomenal job. And now Kirk Ferentz, I'll tell you, he has that Iowa program at an elite level. And Pete McMahon's good football player. I think Oakland, I was critical of some of their early round picks, but overall, I think in the later rounds, has done a very nice job. Brian Riddle, a defensive end out of Cal, has a lot of ability as a pass rusher.
And here in the 7th round, we've come a long way since noon Eastern time yesterday. The first pick overall, the San Francisco 49ers chose Alex Smith. Sal Palantonio has been with the Niners all weekend. Sal, what's the latest from the West Coast?
Hi, Susie. Well, the new face of the new San Francisco 49ers, Alex Smith, arrived on Sunday and immediately made some news. Smith told me that he told his agent, Tom Condon, there will be no contract holdout. Smith told me that he wants to miss no snaps at all in minicamp or in training camp. He wants to be with his teammates throughout this development process. And that immediately put the Niners at ease. And what the Niners have done for the rest of the draft is try to put Smith at ease, put players around him that are going to help him develop and get comfort in this offense. We've got 2 offensive linemen, Frank Gore, running back out of Miami, and later on the second day, 2 wide receivers to help Smith grow within Mike McCarthy's new offensive system. And then the Niners, in the middle of the second day, picked Ronald Fields, a defensive tackle, a nose tackle primarily out of Mississippi State. And he is a guy who's going to help Mike Nolan transform that 4-3 defense into a 3-4 defense, because don't forget, the Niners gave up the most points in the league last season. Over and over again this weekend, Mike Nolan has stressed to me one thing. He is looking for players who are passionate about developing and succeeding in the National Football League, and he believes that he got those players this weekend. Now for a report on the Dallas Cowboys, let's go to Ed Werder in Dallas.
Well, Sal, speaking about points allowed, the Cowboys allowed 405 points last year, the most Bill Parcells coach teams have ever allowed. He anguished routinely in his office on Mondays after defeats about their constant inability to generate pressure on the opposing passer. So he's trying to make this team fit a 3-4 defensive scheme, the kind that the Cowboys have never played. So you look at their picks, DeMarcus Ware, Marcus Spears can both play a 3-4 and a 4-3. They devoted 4 of their first 5 picks the defensive players in the front seven who can play a 3-4. And then they got Marion Barber, who will be the backup to Julius Jones, who was sensational as a Cowboys first pick a year ago. Gives them some backup support there if Jones can't make it through a season after missing half of last year with a shoulder injury. And then they don't have an established free safety as they move Roy Williams from that position to strong safety to make up for the retirement of Darren Woodson. And then, Susie, the other thing they really lack on the offensive line is a starting right tackle, and so they went ahead and devoted a pick there as well. Chris Canty's a little bit of a concern. In addition to rehabbing a major knee injury, which he says he's just about completed that process, he was hit in the head with a beer bottle in January, suffered a detached retina, so it may be a while, if ever, before he gets his Cowboys career started.
All right, Ed, thanks for that, Ed and Sal. Where has the majority of the talent come from this year out of the college ranks?
You go Oklahoma Sooners. I think you look at the Oklahoma Sooner program, and they have a lot of players on both sides of the ball. You talk about 11 right now selected. Florida State with 9, Georgia with 6, and of course Odell Thurman and David Pollock both went to the Cincinnati Bengals, and Marvin Lewis. Virginia, fortunate for Al Groh, he had 6. But you say, okay, what if a couple other of those kids would have come out? With Ahmad Brooks, certainly fortunate to have him back, linebacker. And I think you look at Wisconsin, they have seemed like under Barry Alvarez always produce a lot of prospects. But I think you look at the Oklahoma Sooner program with Dan Cody leading the way. Still haven't had a Jonathan Jackson, their defensive end, selected. Brandon Shelby, defensive back. Still some guys who could be undrafted free agents that will get to camp and have a chance beyond the 11 that have been selected already.
All 12 SEC teams with at least one player. The only Big Ten team without a pick, Penn State, Oklahoma with 11 picks, but not Jason White. Now let's check out our You've Got Mel, presented by Cars.com. Will Jason White be drafted? That's what Gene wants to know.
I would say possibly. I thought he was a 7th rounder, maybe a 6th. That was it. Could go as a priority free agent, maybe as a career backup. I viewed him as in that type of realm. I didn't think starter was in the works for him. I don't look at Jason White from an arm strength standpoint to have the kind of ability. I think he has the size. I think he has the accuracy. Obviously, the toughness coming back from 2 knee injuries the way he did. His completion percentage was outstanding, but it should be when you have guys like Mark Clayton and you have a guy like Brandon Jones, and you have Mark Bradley, and you have Adrian Peterson, a great freshman running back. But this kid was a leader. He was tough. You got to give him credit for battling back. But in the National Football League, Mike, I think a career backup type is where we'll see Jason White. And answer the question, right now we're in the 7th round. I thought it was a chance he could go late in the draft.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if he'll get drafted at all. I see him as a career backup at best. His game just doesn't translate to the NFL.
I'm just trying to figure out why Timmy Chang, all-time NCAA passing leader, hasn't been picked yet. Hey, Ty Detmer came from a system as was a serviceable.
What's he done? Backup.
But he was a serviceable.
Well, maybe Timmy Chang is a free agent. Will get that chance. Yeah. Or is it
Never know. We still have picks to go. Timmy Chang, Jason White could be Mr. Irrelevant. Stick around. We're back from the Javits Center in New York City, working our way through the 7th round of the 2005 NFL Draft. Who jumps out here, Mel, the last 5 picks?
Kid that Denny Green picked up at Indiana PA, LaRon McCoy, a lot of athletic ability there, obviously consistency, and obviously adjusting from a lower level of competition was something you have to almost develop him over a 2-year period, but he has some ability. And of course, Paris Warren, when you look at him going to Tampa Bay out of that Utah program, Urban Meyer, the head coach now, of course, with the Florida Gators. Alex Smith had success because he had some guys who could get open and catch the football. Steve Savoy came out early after Urban Meyer left. Steve Savoy still on the board and probably would have been benefited tremendously by going back. Savoy did not run well at the combine, 4.65. Paris Warren only ran 4.68, but he's bigger than Savoy at 6'1", 216 pounds. He catches the ball and in the open field with that big frame. Tough for some of those smaller cornerbacks to bring him down. So when you look at Alex Smith making those accurate throws down the field, it was either Savoy or Paris Warren making those receptions. And this kid came across, caught the football in traffic. He'll take a hit, he'll get back for more, and they move him around in that offense. So this kid is diversified in his game. I think the speed factor, how will he be able to separate and get open with only about 4.65 to 4.7 speed, even though he does have that 6'1", 216-pound frame.
Well, we've discussed here in the 7th round, these players typically have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. They work hard to make their mark.
Well, you have to. I think, and you hear every kid. There's not a kid in America that doesn't think he's going in the 1st round. I always say there's about 500 kids that think they're 1st rounders by the time draft day rolls around, and they really believe that. You tell a kid he's a 3rd round pick, and they look actually like you're crazy. And I really, that's the case for all these major college stars, Mike. They cannot handle being told they're not going in the first or second round. They act like you're disrespecting them if you say they're a third or fourth round pick.
Thousands of players think they're the top 32. That's the way it is. Well, you know what? That's what gets them into this position. Understand, these guys are all going to get a chance in the NFL, so they are part of an elite group that's going to get a shot.
There is always a debate. Is it better to be a 7th-round pick or an undrafted free agent? Because as an the money's about the same. As an undrafted free agent, you have a chance to now pick 3 or 4 teams that may be interested in you as well. Everybody wants to be drafted, but is it more beneficial not to go drafted at this stage?
20 years from now, you can tell your grandkids you were a part of an organization, at least for a period of time. So to me, I'd rather be drafted.
And how about being drafted first round? Wasn't quite what Aaron Rodgers expected. He had led Cal to their best season in 50 years, 10-2, but yet he had to wait till pick number 24, the Green Bay Packers. But as you'll see, this NFL dream really wasn't just a dream, it was a plan.
Aaron Rodgers, quarterback.
I have always been the quarterback. Starting at recess in like first, second, third grade, I've always wanted the ball in my hands and shaped who I am. I think football and life, there's a lot of correlation between the things it takes to be successful on the field, a lot of the same things it takes to be successful in life. I started watching football, my mom says about 3 years old, and I was able to watch a whole game. I started writing plays at home or at school, you know, when I wasn't supposed to be, just drawing up, you know, plays in my mind and on paper and stuff. And I've just been a fanatic, I think, since I was really little. We were 49er fans as a family. And so every time we turn on TV to watch football, it was Joe Montana. I just love the way he led, his leadership, his poise in the pocket, the way he played in big games. To be able to follow in his footsteps, the greatest quarterback of all time, would be awesome. My favorite memory growing up was the drive. Montana's 92-yard drive in the Super Bowl against the Bengals when he had John Taylor for a touchdown. After that point, I said, I want to play football and I want to win Super Bowls and I want to lead my team on a last-second drive to win the game. I almost quit football after my senior season because nobody had come calling to me. I wasn't getting recruited by anybody but Division III and NAIA schools, and I thought I was a little better than that. So I had to look at myself in the mirror and be honest with myself about my skills. Playing junior college football really gave me a perspective, I think, on life and on football. It was great for me because I got my confidence back. I wouldn't change that year for anything. The last 3.5, 4 years have been a wild ride. From not getting recruited out of high school to playing junior college football and excelling there, to be at Cal and to be a backup for 4 games and then, you know, start the last 23 games. I've learned a lot along the way. I'm excited about moving on and this next challenge in front of me.
And of course, yesterday he learned quite a bit about the business of the NFL as well.
Well, you go from being the #1 pick a week and a half before the draft to being the 24th pick overall, and I think it is something where I thought Aaron Rodgers handled it very well. He became a fan favorite here in New York and certainly in Green Bay when you could be the heir apparent to Brett Favre. You talk about a guy like Aaron Rodgers, I thought he would be about 6'1", about 210, 215, and I'll tell you, when they measured him at the combine, he was 6'2", 223. There was no size problem or size question with Aaron Rodgers. You know about the productivity in Jeff Tedford's offense, and I talked to Aaron, I said about the mechanical delivery and the way he holds the football shoulder level, and he did not do that at Butte Junior College. He said he could adjust to going back possibly, Susie, and I think that may be tweaked in the NFL, especially when you talk about playing at Lambeau and bad weather, when you got to get the ball down the field and power the football more. He has to be a little bit more fluid in his motion.
And as we said to him repeatedly yesterday, sometimes things happen for a reason, and going to Green Bay certainly worth the wait. And we bring in Aaron Rodgers now through our Coors Light video conferencing. Aaron, haven't seen you in a while. How's Green Bay?
It's great, Susie. It's great to be out here.
Who's the first person you were greeted by there?
By the quarterback coach. But at the same time, there are a bunch of fans out there really encouraging me, telling me how excited they were that I was out here. And it's exciting being out here. It's a great organization and a great facility, and I just can't wait to get started this weekend.
What is the process now?
I've just been meeting with the team today and meeting everybody in the organization, and then I'm going to go back home tonight to Chico, spend some time with my family, and come back out here on Thursday for the first mini camp.
Do you already have a playbook, and what's the studying process to learn their system?
Well, I haven't got it yet. I'm going to meet with the quarterback coach again here in a little bit, but I'm just going to take it slow, and he just wants to give me part of the playbook now so he doesn't throw it all on me right away. But I'm a quick learner, and I'm gonna want, you know, to learn the entire offense very quickly and be able to start, you know, being comfortable in the offense and being successful as well.
There's a pretty popular quarterback already in Green Bay. Has there been any communication yet?
Unfortunately, not yet, but I'm excited to meet him this weekend. I actually got a call last night from a Mississippi number. I thought it might be Brett, but it was actually Rich Campbell, former quarterback for Green Bay. He just encouraged me about what happened to me.
What is it that you've admired most about Brett?
His mental and physical toughness. Obviously, the streak of consecutive starts is very impressive, but at the same time, the way he doesn't lose confidence when things don't go his way, continues to fight hard through everything, and just being so smart and so productive in the fourth quarter, something I try and pattern myself after.
Aaron, an enviable position you're in there in Green Bay. Good luck the rest of the way.
Thanks a lot, Susie. Tell Mel I said hi.
Speaking of Mel, late here in the 7th round, why don't you take us through the last few picks?
Well, you have always had some surprises, Susie. Players, some notable players that are passed over for others, some of which weren't even starters. And you see that with some of the players on the board right now coming off. Matt Castle, quarterback of USC, a backup to Matt Leinart, selected ahead of Ryan Fitzpatrick from Harvard, Brian Randall, Virginia Tech, Gino Godoy, Cincinnati, and certainly Jason White from Oklahoma and Timmy Chang from Hawaii. So here's a kid back up to Matt Leinart going to the New England Patriots. And that's what happens sometimes in the draft process.
But that's amazing. A backup quarterback to Matt Leinart drafted ahead of all those guys you just mentioned. I'm scratching my head.
Don't scratch your
I'll scratch your head.
Do you sense the anticipation?
No. All I can tell you is I got to hear why this happened. Only Mel would have put him in his book, and Mel actually did put Matt Castle, at least listed him in his book as a possible quarterback prospect.
Yeah, I was talking about Mr. Irrelevant. We're closing in, but right now, let's go to Andrea Kramer.
Thanks a lot, Susie. Well, rookies will be going to their camps starting really next weekend, and then off-season conditioning programs will be in full throttle. Veterans will be showing up in May, which brings up the issue of how much is too much. 70% of injuries, John, are overuse, non-contact injuries, muscle pulls, things of that nature. And the vast majority of those injuries occur before the regular season. Case in point, you. You tore your Achilles last year, the first quarter of the first preseason game. How much is too much when it comes to off-season conditioning?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily an off-season conditioning thing. I think guys need to stay in better shape throughout the year, but it's not a matter of working out or doing things. It's when you're done with the season. If you play at 300 pounds, don't let your body get to 330, and then 2 months later you try and drop that weight, you try and work out, you try and be part of the off-season program. It's going to take you that much longer, and it's that much more stress on your body. But try and stay around that your optimal body weight, and then when you get into working out, you're not trying to peak in April, you're not trying to peak in June. You want to peak, September 11 this year when we start the regular season. That's when you want to peak, and coaches need to be smart about how they handle veterans in the preseason. We're playing 4 preseason games, sometimes 5, and a lot of veterans don't need those extra reps during the preseason game. We all need to get our timing down. We need to get our pads under us. We need to get tightened up for the regular season, but we also need to be smart and make sure everybody's healthy going into the regular season.
What do you think should be done about the preseason?
In my opinion, it needs to be shortened a little bit. If you want to add a couple of games to the regular season, that's fine. It's going to add more excitement. It's going to add, everybody wants to know, what are you going to do about the revenue? Well, it's going to add more revenue to the NFL, and it's always about money. But, shorten it up, maybe make it more for the young guys. You still got to prove yourself. I'm not saying that old guys don't have to prove themselves, but their bodies are older. They've already proved themselves in some way. So there's got to be a combination of ways to get it done.
Very quickly, the pressure to attend the voluntary off-season conditioning programs, what exists?
Well, it varies from organization to organization, and it varies from coach to coach as different coaches come in. Right now, what we have is a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday deal, and it's very easy for guys to come in, and it's not necessarily to come in and make sure you're in shape, make sure you're doing all these things. It's to learn the offense, it's to learn how to work together with different guys, and we're not out there competing against the defense. That's obviously it's against the rules. We can't do that. But we're out there learning. We're out there learning to work together. We're familiarizing ourselves with the new guys, and it's just a teamwork building concept.
And by the way, the latest craze in conditioning is something called prehab, and it'll really start at the end of the season, where the teams will test the imbalance in players, muscle imbalances in players, and they start prescribing various programs to correct those imbalances, anything to keep the commodity, the players, on the field. The NFL Draft continues. The end of round 7 coming up. You don't want to miss who's going to be Mr. Irrelevant 2005. Please stay with us.
Welcome back to the NFL Live set on the coverage of ESPN and the 2005 NFL Draft. Trey Wingo here with a boatload of experts. Merrill Hodge.
You are correct.
Experts. Our insider, Randy Mueller. As we go towards Mr. Irrelevant, the final pick in the draft, one thing we need to point out, the draft is extremely relevant, and the offseason is as well. So as we look, guys, at teams from the time they stopped playing their final game of the regular season to now, give me 3 teams, each one of you, that has improved the most. Merrill, we start with you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Trent. I appreciate it.
Can we talk about Merrill's clothes for a while?
We'll do that. We'll do that later.
Trust me, we'll have time.
As long as everything pans out, I really love what the Arizona Cardinals have done. And you have to go beyond just the draft, even free agency. So you have to start with Kurt Warner. Antrell Roll, the corner from Miami coming in. I think he'll be able to do a lot of things defensively for them, especially how defense is having to play now with the corner being physical. And J.J. Arrington as a running back to be able to establish what they do offensively. I loved what Arizona did, and I think that now, right now, if these guys all pan out, they have an opportunity.
Why, no disclaimer. You have to put a disclaimer if they all pan out. That's part of how it works.
That's kind of the whole deal with everybody.
A disclaimer.
I am saying they're going to. Okay?
Go ahead.
Now, they do that, they immediately have a chance to win that division. I don't think there's any question that they will compete for that division. I like the Cincinnati Bengals. Chuck Brehesan, the defensive coordinator, I love him. And then Pollock, to be able to get him in the first round, they'll be able to get pressure on the quarterback. Carson Palmer is going to be an absolute star. And then I like the Atlanta Falcons. Rhodey, the wide receiver there.
Roddy White.
Roddy White, thank you very much. From Alabama, Birmingham. Because when you look at him, he does possess that big physical style, and he has enormous speed. And Mike Vick will be in the system for his second year, so there'll be great improvement on that end.
Well, although they were a playoff team a year ago, the Minnesota Vikings, I think they are the most improved team.
They
in
were
the
barely a playoff
They
team.
were a playoff team. But through free agency, they've rebuilt their football team. Through the draft, getting Troy Williamson, I think an outstanding pick. Gives them the vertical threat in the game. Erasmus James, you get the edge pass rusher. Minnesota very much improved. I like what the Baltimore Ravens did. Derek Mason, great pickup at wide receiver, and Mark Clayton, one of the guys that I loved in this draft, not only as a player but a locker room guy, because in the National Football League, you've got to win in the locker room first with character people. So I like the guys that the Ravens assembled this offseason. And Dallas gave up over 400 points last year on the defensive side of the football. Bill Parcells does not like his teams to play poor defense. They address the defense. They're going to vary between the 4-3, the 3-4. If they protect Drew Bledsoe, I think the Cowboys could return to the playoffs.
Randy?
I think you're both partially right. How about that? Both
Partially?
right.
Well, I can't wait to hear yours.
We'll bring it around.
Check it out. Arizona, I think, is better. No question about it.
Well, they're 6-10. They obviously only
Well, it's not like we took Miami, who was 4-12.
Well, he wanted to take Miami.
Separate issue.
Kurt Warner is going to make the difference there. The ball will come out of the pocket. They'll get it downfield. They will look like a pro-style passing attack. He will make all the difference. The key is whether they can keep him upright in the pocket or not. That's the big one for me. And the depth at Arizona isn't quite what it is with the rest of the upper echelon NFC teams. If they can keep Kurt Warner healthy, they'll be fine. Dallas Cowboys, another team. I agree with you, Jaws. They will be better. This is the first chance Bill Parcells has had to put his blueprint on that defense. They will find a way to stop the run. That's the whole key with them. They're bigger. They're more physical at the point. They've got to stop the run. And Baltimore, I agree, will be better. They've got options now for Kyle Bowler. The pressure's on Kyle Bowler, but they have got big covered at receiver now. They'll get it done. They've got tall guys. They've got options for him. He'll be able to dump the ball off. Todd Heap's back. I think they'll be better offensively.
All right, you're banking on Kyle Bowler.
Well, that is the issue here. Listen, guys,
I've been telling you that for a year. You never believe
here. As an organization, what happens to the Baltimore Ravens if Kyle doesn't make that step? And we're certainly hoping that he does and everything works out fine, but all the pieces are there. He's got the defense, the tight end, the running back, and now he's got weapons. It is really all on him.
We got issues if he doesn't come through.
I mean, how many years back does this organization take a step back there if this is the problem?
Well, I think anytime you fail on a quarterback, you can fall back 2 or 3 years. That's why I wouldn't take one in the first round. And I think they're overrated, and you can find them later in the round, and you can bring them behind a veteran to build up. You heard me? Look at that position.
They took one step, though, in getting a little protection with Derek Anderson from Oregon State. I don't think he's Kyle Bowler or ready to play, but at some point, this is a guy physically that can make all the throws. In a year or two, if Kyle Bowler doesn't come through, they have an option.
So if we have a consensus for the 3 of them, which is dicey at best, we seem to think
Might start
Arizona,
another riot.
Baltimore, and Dallas. Yes?
Correct. Yeah, but I don't have any disclaimers like Merrill does, you know.
I think that's my list, Trey.
There you go. Well, I always go with the guy who's been there in the war room. All right, thanks very much. Stay with us. Lots more coming on the 2005 draft. Steamrolling towards Mr. Irrelevant. Hand him the Heisman.
One of the many traditions on day 2 of the NFL draft, Mike Golick taking care of the diehards and taking care of himself, too. How many calories do you think consumed on draft?
Well, he's drinking water at least.
Well, I don't actually not drinking water.
Yeah, I spilled it.
Spilling water.
Spilled it on my...
Oh, by the way, the rest of us are working.
No, you got to throw the cookies out. You got to feed the animals out there to keep them sane. So
But do you notice we're so numb to this that the three of us, we're working
Some of us are
and
working.
You
you're tossing.
yelled at me when I was throwing the crumbs were getting sprayed over on you
Right.
guys.
How about the jelly donut?
The jelly donut.
That
I
was
took a
one
bite
for
of
the
the
books.
jelly donut, and that was almost the end of my day.
You didn't think it was a jelly donut.
No, I
It
didn't.
came squirting everywhere. It was all over him.
Not pretty.
How'd you survive that?
Hey, we got a long day. We got to survive. All these people are sticking with us. So
They are.
you know what? We got to take care of
I got a fan
There you
club.
go, the Mike Golick fan club.
them. Yeah, that's the real fan club I want.
But guys, this is serious business. We're late in the 7th round. Last 10 picks.
Last 10 picks, Suze. I think you get some players here that can help you out at least on special teams. And I think you look at some guys here. We talked about Matt Castle, the backup quarterback to Matt Leinart, selected ahead of a lot of guys that you thought would have been drafted by now, like Ryan Fitzpatrick from Harvard, maybe a Timmy Chang from Hawaii, and Jason White from Oklahoma as well, still on the board. When you look at players still that have ability to come in and maybe compete for an opportunity, Jimmy Verdon has versatility at end-to-end tackle going to New Orleans, and certainly Cornelius Wortham, outside linebacker from Alabama, going to the Seattle Seahawks late in round 7. You're talking about a kid who has that chiseled frame. He's about 6'1½", 235 pounds. Very reliable at Alabama. He knew he'd show up every week, didn't miss much playing time at all because of injuries over his 4 years in Tuscaloosa with the Crimson Tide. Look at the negative with Cornelius Wortham is despite the fact that he runs in that 4.7 range, coverage skills, even though you see him here making a play, overall coverage skills were questionable. One-dimensional player to a certain extent. And how will he be in the pro level? Will he be on the field every down if he gets that opportunity? That's a big question, Mike. I know you saw a lot of Cornelius Wortham during his career at Alabama.
Absolutely. When you say one-dimensional, I agree with you. Here's a guy that's going to have to be a special teams demon in the beginning, as a lot of these draft picks are. That's what they're going to have to make their work right off the bat and then work their way into the lineup if they can. I mean, at this point, some of them are just going to be special teamers, and some will move on to bigger and better things.
And as we count down to Mr. Irrelevant, which is pick number 255, it raises this question, and we'll tackle it in our 3 and Out, presented by Hummer. Is it better to be a 7th round pick or an undrafted free agent?
For pride's sake, it's better to be drafted. Practically speaking, I think it's better to go undrafted at this stage because a player, if he has a good agent, and this is where players actually need agents, they have already done their homework as to which teams need their particular position. Where is the depth chart thin for some of these teams, giving you a better chance to make their rosters. There are undrafted free agents that play almost every year in the Super Bowl, so it's okay.
It is, and I don't think there's any question. You can pick your spots. If you're a linebacker and you say, hey, they needed help at that spot, they didn't get it in the draft day, go to that team, give yourself a better opportunity. But if you are drafted, it means the team had a good opinion of you. It's only a 7-round draft. It's not 12 rounds or 17 rounds like it used to be. And I really believe that if they feel highly enough to make you a draft pick, you come in with a little bit ahead of the game. Not a lot, because when you go to minicamp, you don't have on your back doesn't say free agent or late round pick. But I think you can always, even if you don't make it in the NFL, you always say you had that association with an organization. If you were drafted, you're in the history books forever.
I agree with that. And when I was in the draft in '85, it was 12 rounds, and I went in the 10th round, and I was happy to be drafted. I would have rather got drafted in the 12th round than be a free agent. I know you can get a choice a little bit as a free agent, but there is something to a team drafting you. That means they've checked you out, they've done some homework on you, and they think you can possibly bring something to the team. And we've seen later round draft picks time and time again become superstars in the NFL. So given a choice, and maybe I'm biased because I was a late round draft choice, I would always rather be drafted than a free agent.
It is a matter of pride. And they also, these guys, these undrafted free agents out there will also have to compete with some of the bigger name free agents who are still on the market, who are out there as well. We're getting close to conclusion here in New York. Glad you're still with us.
Working our way towards the end of round 7 in the 2005 draft, back on the NFL Live set. Guys, listen, let's face it, drafting is an inexact science. half these guys picked may pan out, the other half basically meat puppets. That's what they're going to be. It's just the way it goes. It is a big-time risk-reward situation. So right now, put all three of you on the spot. Randy Mueller, I want to start with you. Which one of these rookie drafted is going to have the biggest impact in 2005 when it's all said and done for their team?
I'm going to say Cedric Benson, running back from Texas, now with Chicago Bears. I think he's a guy right now that's as polished as there is in this draft. You can give it to him tomorrow. 25 times, he's going to run for 130. I think he'll run downhill between the tackles. Muhsin Muhammad will stretch the defense a little bit. I think this guy will become Rex Grossman's best pal. He's going to find a way to get him the ball. They still need a vertical
yeah, just keep going.
I think Cedric Benson is going to be a really good player and have an impact this year.
Will he benefit from the team he goes to? Because it is going to be one of those teams in Chicago, outdoors, cold, run the ball, and they've got a defense behind him.
And Lovie Smith wants to control the clock. He wants to have a field position game. He wants to run the ball 30 times if he can. This is the guy that can do it. He has proved he can carry a team week to week, and not only week to week, year to year. This is a good pick for them, and I think a nice fit in Chicago.
And if his reaction after he got drafted is indicative of any way of how he's going to play, he's going to go out there with something to prove.
He will face 9 and 10 in the box, though.
Yeah, and running back is probably the easiest position to assimilate into any NFL team outside of a defensive tackle.
Are you saying anybody can say that?
It's true.
I just wanted to pique your interest a little bit. So
settle down.
So that's what I'm going to go to the defensive side of the ball, and that's going to be Derek Johnson, the #1 pick of the Kansas City Chiefs.
He doesn't
quickness, agility, muscle.
Tackle.
He tackles very well. He doesn't take blocks on very well, but he'll learn how to take them. The NFL linebacker position now is about being an athlete, chasing plays down, running around. Look, he ran around the block and still made the play. That's what Derek Johnson does.
That's in college, my
He's
friend.
an athlete. He's quick. He gets the ball, pursuit. He will be a good fit for Gunther Cunningham's defense.
Gunther Cunningham?
I know. I'm a defense.
You jump around a block about 2 times, Gunther Cunningham will come out of the box.
The one thing the Chiefs did not have at linebacker last year was speed. They now have speed. That'll be a big difference for them. Derek Johnson will make it in.
Okay, that's great, but he goes to a defense that's not going to give him a lot of help. This is a defense that has been really bad the last couple years.
Has. This defense is much better now. The offseason's been terrific. Got Patrick Surtain.
How much have they played together? Huh? How much have they played together?
Well, they're going to start playing together next weekend, a mini camp.
So we still don't know.
We'll see what happens. I mean, look, you could say on paper they've upgraded, but until those 11 guys in that
it's
red
still the most dynamic
when they come together, you still got to prove it because they have not proven anything over the last couple years.
All right, go ahead.
Hodge, I should tell you, I'm stunned by this. Merrill Hodge, Captain Factor back here, has gone away from a running back and an impact.
Take
his temperature.
Troy Williamson will come in and will explode in the National Football League because of Dante Culpepper. He's the wideout for the Minnesota Vikings that they got to replace Randy Moss. He has the speed of Randy Moss. He will lift that safety. You will have to adjust safeties to his side, and you will have to account for him with 2 people. He has the speed, and he has Dante Culpepper. That is why. He has a big-time arm thrown to him who is a veteran. That is the one advantage that he has, unlike your 2 picks. Cedric Benson's going to be facing 10 guys in the box. Your guy Johnson is going to be faced with a brand new defense and all kinds of new players, and he doesn't take on blocks, and all he does is run around.
Okay, for your information, the hardest position to play as a rookie is quarterback. The second hardest is wide receiver. He's going to have a tough time getting on the field.
You're 4'2". It ain't that hard. Go deep.
No, it is. Go deep. See, that's the problem. Go deep. There's a lot more than just running down the field. You got to learn how to read on the move. You got to learn how to get open.
Here's the best part of this whole discussion. Without question, Merrill Hodge said for the last week and a half, the best player in the draft was Ronnie Brown. So big six overall.
Okay, that's not cameras on me. You do have to account for where he is going. Ronnie Brown is going to be asked to do a lot, and he doesn't have a lot of help around him.
You know what he's going to be asked
Troy
to do?
Williamson has Dante
Take the ball and go that way.
Hey, Ronnie Brown. Ronnie Brown's
take the ball, run forward,
run hard. Ronnie Brown will still be an excellent ball player, but Dante Culpepper is why I took Troy Williamson.
So there's a lot of analysis.
Thank you. Yeah, you have to think beyond the box.
You just got to weave your way through the puzzle sometimes with Merrill. And we are winding our way through the end of round 7. Stay with us. Lots more coming. The 2005 draft on ESPN.
ESPN's exclusive coverage of the NFL Draft is presented by Coors Light, the official beer sponsor of the NFL. And in part by Mazda, always the soul of a sports car. And Arby's new Market Fresh Reuben sandwich. It'll have you saying, I'm thinking Arby's.
Counting down to the conclusion of the 2005 NFL Draft started many, many hours ago as we check in on the highlights with our Mazda Draft Track. Noon Eastern time yesterday, the San Francisco 49ers made Alex Smith, quarterback out of Utah, the #1 pick overall. And then the waiting game was on for Aaron Rodgers of Cal, picked number 24 by the Packers. He'll learn from the best in Brett Favre. Still waiting. The 2003 Heisman winner, Jason White, still on the board. Now, late here in the 7th round, who are you looking at?
A couple guys who I think could have a legitimate chance of making an NFL roster. I think you look at a guy like Lionel Gates, a running back out of Louisville, going in this 7th round to the Buffalo Bills. Of course, they had Willis McGahee. You look at the Travis Henry situation. I look at a guy like Lionel Gates, who's versatile, good size, can catch the football out of the backfield. We already talked about Cornelius Wortham. If he can show that he has coverage skills, he could be a factor. And, of course, on special teams, he should be a dynamic player, at least initially, in the National Football League. Fanani's a kid out of Utah, will have a chance in Marvin Lewis's system to make that football team as a reserve. And Verdon, same thing, because of versatility in New Orleans, will have an opportunity. Look at a guy that I think is going to be very intriguing to see how he's going to project. He's going to be Jeremy Parquette. Shropshire as well, I think, was a good 7th round pick. Roberson was a former wide receiver turned cornerback at Eastern Michigan, but Parquette, big kid, 6'6 and a half, 326 pounds. So you have a mountain of a man with that size, physically imposing. Did a decent job for the Golden Eagles, but wasn't a dominant performer. You talked about a guy a little slow out of his stance at times. Watching here, number 77. Yeah, a guy that a little lethargic sometime in his movements. Let some defensive ends get the best of him at the snap of the ball. And something about a greater sense of urgency. That's something that they're going to have to work on at the pro level. I classified him as an underachiever. When you have that kind of talent, pretty good athlete, and you're huge like that, you should be able to play a higher level and be more consistent. Another thing he has to work on is getting that weight room. Only 17 reps, Mike, for a 6'6 and a half, 326 pounder. That's not going to get it done.
That's awful. That is not going to get it done. And once you get to the next level, guys are going to be running right by him, and he's going to have to either swim or he's going to sink. So he's going to have to elevate his game. He'll get his chance, but the level increases quickly.
The goal for every one of these guys taken was to be #1 overall, and that only belongs to one player every year. This year, it was Alex Smith. He ran one of the most sophisticated offenses in college football, and that, of course, was a perfect fit because since he was a little kid, he's been focused. He arrived at Utah with so many credits, he graduated in 2 years. But what does that mean for football?
Alex Smith, quarterback.
I'm definitely more successful because of my mind. And I just say that because there's so many people that have athletic ability, and I think I definitely do. The reason that I've been successful and the reason it separates me is absolutely because of my mind, you know, and the willingness and the drive to be successful. You can be athletically gifted, you can be as smart as you want to be, but if you don't have that desire, you're not a good football player. Athletic ability got us all to this level, and I think the thing that's going to separate me is work ethic. I'm going to work harder than anybody and be more prepared than anybody. Football's in my blood. So many people in my family play football, coach football. You know, it's something that I always knew I was going to do. I had to. You know, whether I was any good at it or not, it was something that I was going to do. And because of that, I think I work harder for it. My idol has always been John Elway. And always will be. You know, he's won more games than any quarterback in NFL history. He got it done any way he could. You know, he was going to make plays with his feet, with his arm. Had a lot of moxie. He was just, you know, kind of took the team on his shoulders. Wasn't afraid of anything. You look at the quarterbacks in the NFL right now, and the ones that are successful aren't always the ones that are most athletic. It's the ones that have it upstairs. Understand the game mentally, understand complex schemes, going to put the work in the film room. The system I got to play in allowed me to do so many things. I got to run with the ball in college. I got to handle complex schemes. I got to put the entire game plan on my shoulders. I was calling plays at the line of scrimmage. I was checking so many different things. So I think it's something that will give me the edge at the next level, and especially for me to reach my potential.
Well, he's a principal's kid, and now he's working on his master's. One of the smartest, maybe, to ever make that transition from college to the pros.
No question, Susie. I think you look at an Alex Smith, and you look at size. He's 6'4", he's 215 pounds, and probably another few years he'll be 225, 228. He's going to fill in that frame. He's only 20 years of age today. He'll turn 21 on May 7th. And a kid, you talk about a high school career. This kid didn't lose any football games, 2 only. Graduated, as you said, Susie, in 2 years with that high GPA. Some have labeled him, I talked about him as the smartest player ever go from college to pro, and graduating in 2 years proves that. You look at here, the ability, the arm strength that people question. And I think they showed up in the workouts maybe be a little better than they anticipated. I know when we started talking about Alex Smith as the #1 overall pick, you know, Mort, you discussed it. They said, well, is he physically talented enough, a product of a system that's all shotgun? Well, after all was said and done, he became the #1 quarterback. And I think when you look at mobility, arm strength being better than expected, size, smarts, accuracy, everything really came together for Alex Smith at the right time.
You know, the idea that he played in a gimmicky offense and that was a negative against him really rubbed his Utah coach Urban Meyer the wrong way. And Urban Meyer is now in Florida. I spoke with him last week, and you know, he said if it's such a gadgety, gimmicky offense, you realize that a lot of our passing routes came from Scott Linehan, who was the offensive coordinator with the Minnesota Vikings, now with the Miami Dolphins. And he said, if it's such a gimmicky offense, why did Bill Belichick of the Patriots just send down his quarterback coach to spend a day with us to learn a little bit more about our offense? So I think Urban Meyer really feels like this was an unfair knock. And by the way, Nick Saban said, hey, he ran the offense that he was exactly asked to do, and he ran it to perfection.
He'll fit in well in San Francisco. The quarterback got sacked 52 times last year, and Alex Smith is going to get pressure. He's going to. Some of the best things he does is throw on the run, so it's actually going to fit into his strength being in San Francisco, at least to start out, till they shore up that O-line.
Well, anytime you have a young team and maybe you don't have a ton of protection, it's good to have a guy who is athletic, who can at least have some escapability, save himself.
Yeah.
Right?
He'll take a hit, too.
Almost done here from New York. Stay with us.
Size, intelligence, my arm.
Alex Smith will score! Touchdown, Utah!
If value's what you're after, you better pick me.
Welcome back to the 2005 NFL Draft, Round 7 rolling along. John Jansen, 1999, offensive tackles taken. John Tate, Luke Pettigrew, L.J. Shelton, Aaron Gibson, Chris Terry, and then number 77, John Jansen from Michigan. What sort of motivation did that provide for you to go at that point in the draft?
Well, every year that you're in the NFL, you look and you say, okay, well, this guy was cut from this team, this guy was cut from this team, this guy is moved to a different position, this guy is now a backup. You know, you look at those things and you say, hey, you know, I really think that I should have been taken ahead of this guy. And you use that as motivation year to year to prove that you were a better player, that some team made a mistake. They should have taken me earlier. And I think everybody in the NFL is going to say that, whether you're taking #2 or you're taking, you know, as Mr. Irrelevant, the last player in the draft, you're going to say, all these guys were taken ahead of me, and I'm still playing in front of them. I'm still doing better than they were. I should have been taken ahead of them.
But when it comes to a position like tackle, what makes you think that you're better than another guy? What is it, the number of yards that a running back is running for, or the number of sacks given up? How can you quantify that?
Well, it's obviously a lot harder, and a lot of it has to go with film work. A lot of it has to go with just rumor around the league. And again, it's all rumor. But, you know, I know, and other people know when they watch me, that there are guys out there that I may be better than. There may be guys that were taken after me that they think they're better than me. And it's part of being a competitor in the NFL. And, you know, you look at different teams like Detroit. I grew up there. I played at Michigan and won a national championship there, was involved in the community. They took another guy in the Big Ten ahead of me in the first round. And that's just something that you use as motivation throughout your career. And you say, hey, I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to make them say, every time that I play there, I wish I would have taken Jansen in '99.
All right, John, thank you so much for being with us. And we were down to one. By the way, when Trent Green left and the Chiefs picked a quarterback in the 7th round, he said, that's okay. James Killian from Tulsa can have a 6-year apprenticeship. So that's it from here at the NFL Players Roundtable. Now we'll head to break. We are waiting for Mr. Irrelevant, the final pick of the 2005 draft by the New England Patriots. Stay tuned for that.
Welcome back to the 2005 NFL Draft, presented by Coors Light.
Green Bay's on the clock. Overall pick number 245. A couple of Big Ten running backs taken. Mel?
Look at him, Susie. Anthony Davis. And I know, Mike, you've seen a lot of him. Here's a kid who is that low, compact, 5'6½", 200-pound frame. And when he was healthy, he put up outstanding numbers. And he proved, like I say, when he was healthy, he wasn't afraid of a workload. He'd carry the ball 39 times against Ohio State for 168 yards, 31 times for 117 yards against Northwestern. The kid is a gutsy runner. He's got quickness, hit for a number of big plays of over 10, 15, 20 yards during his career playing at Camp Randall Stadium in Wisconsin. You look at a guy, Madison, did a real good job. The question is durability. He had some, obviously, injury problems that kept him on the sidelines. And you look at him, if he wasn't for the injury bug, probably would have been a 3rd or 4th round pick. But he's got talent. Can he stay on the field over the long haul? He's going to be asked to be a backup in the NFL, so maybe that won't be as big a factor as it was at Wisconsin.
I actually think he fits into the Indianapolis scheme pretty well with that wide stretch running game. When you see Peyton Manning flying out there to hand the ball off, it gives him options with the cutback where he can play in space, and that's what he does best.
And you look at another Big Ten running back / small fullback, Noah Herron, going to the Pittsburgh Steelers late in round 7. You look at Noah Herron and his size. That's why I talk about a guy who could be maybe a small fullback, 5'11", between 220 and 225. Well, he saved his best for last at Northwestern this past year. Led the team with over 1,300 rushing yards, scored 14 touchdowns, caught 36 passes out of the backfield. Did a good job overall. In fact, in at least 10 games, he had 1 touchdown. So you're talking about a guy who was productive, showed some quickness to the outside, even though his 40 time is pretty average. I look at a guy that could be that small fullback, a guy that gives you everything he has the versatility, backup role, and could be a running back, could be a backup fullback because he has ability in that area, will give it up as a blocker, a very willing lead blocker. I think he has a chance, Mike, to make a football team.
Oh, well, without a doubt, in Pittsburgh, where they have some running backs, he is going to have to be a special teams madman there, and he's the type of guy, you can tell by the look right there, quite honestly, he's going to go flying down the field to try and take somebody out.
You can certainly learn from the bus. One of the most compelling moves of the offseason was the trade of Randy Moss to the Oakland Raiders. Through our Kawasaki trade recap, you'll see that Oakland traded that number 7 pick, which Minnesota took Troy Williamson, the speedy wide receiver from South Carolina. They also, with a 7th-round pick, picked cornerback Adrian Ward of UTEP, and in that deal also came linebacker Napoleon Harris. So the big question for the Raiders is, we know how effective Randy Moss can be as long as he's willing to fit in.
Well, and I think he'll fit in here. You know, you're going into an offense that he loves the best, and that's going to be a high-flying offense. That's what he had in Minnesota when he takes it down the field, and you got a guy that can crank it up like Dante Culpepper. When in doubt, throw it up, let him come down with it. And in that offense, that vertical offense in Oakland that Norv Turner loves, and Kerry Collins can get the ball downfield. You have him, you have Jerry Porter. He's bringing the other guys like Ronald Curry, the athletes, into play. He wants a vertical offense, does Norv Turner. Take it down the field. And hey, when Randy Moss is healthy, Randy Moss is the best wide receiver in the NFL. I don't think there's any doubt about that with what he's done already in his career. So, as long as, obviously, winning counts to keep him happy, we'll see what happens out there. But the system is perfect for Randy Moss and what they want to do out in Oakland.
The more than 9,000 yards, that's the most over 7 years in the history of the NFL.
Well, listen, he is a great skill player, one of the all-time great skill players in NFL history, but there are no Randy Mosses on the New England Patriots. This is a team game. And at some point, Randy Moss wore out his welcome in Minnesota because he wore on his teammates and his coaching staff. And it was, sometimes it's in practice. Is Randy practicing hard today? What's he doing in the game? Is he wearing on the quarterback, Dante Culpepper? The answer was yes, and I really believe it was Culpepper's success without Randy Moss in the lineup this year, or when Randy Moss was hurt, that was a determining factor that it's okay to let go. Not to mention, as I said, there are no Randy Mosses on the New England Patriots.
Well, I think you look at Randy Moss, and you look at the difference between Randy Moss in Minnesota and Randy Moss now in Oakland Raider. Does this assist the Minnesota Vikings? Everybody's kind of making him the trendy pick to be a Super Bowl contender, and I wonder, is Randy Moss's loss in Minnesota going to be made up for by Troy Williamson? People say he's going to have the impact as a rookie coming from a run-oriented offense. Even though he has great speed and great potential, can Troy Williamson be asked to step in as a rookie and make up for the loss of Randy Moss in Minnesota?
And Mort, I agree with you. Dante Culpepper's success with Randy Moss not in there, the way Nate Burleson stepped up, Marcus Robinson stepped up, now you bring in Troy Williamson, I really think him succeeding without Moss was a key in saying, okay, we can live without him.
So you think
we
Minnesota's fine?
I think, you know, I think they're going to be okay.
Williamson doesn't replace Randy Moss.
No.
He replaces a part of it.
Right.
I think the bigger question continues to be on defense because they brought in a lot of big-name free agents. Ken under Ted Cottrell, they all meld together to form a really solid defense. Big names don't always translate. Stay with us. Close to conclusion here at the NFL Draft.
I'm Carnell Williams.
I'm Ronnie Brown.
I'm Heath Miller. I'm David Pollock.
I'm Alex Smith.
I'm Braylon Edwards.
I'm Aaron Rodgers.
And you're watching the 2005
NFL Draft.
NFL Draft on ESPN.
Welcome back to New York, and a reminder that you can catch more Major League Baseball action tonight on ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. Eric Chavez and the Oakland Athletics take on reigning co-MVP Vladimir Guerrero and the LA Angels of Anaheim. Coverage begins at 7 Eastern with Baseball Tonight. They're still here.
They're nuts. That's why I feel
Why are you here?
Going. It's going.
There are escorts home.
Well, the reason we're here is to sum this all up. Who do you think had the best overall draft?
Well, I think I'm going to start out with the Minnesota Vikings. And what I'm going to do, it's tough to go to the lower picks because a lot of those guys are going to be counted on as special teams until we see what they can do. I look at the top. Troy Williamson replaces Randy Moss. He won't be able to replace him, but he fits perfectly in the vertical system that they want in Minnesota with Dante Culpepper. Erasmus James fits into that undersized defensive line, quick off the edge, make penetration, make plays behind the line, great hand play. Marcus Johnson, again, that O-line they love, big O-lineman. He's a large one. Running back get behind that line, and they make some yards. So while the rest of the draft, obviously they take, you know, some players that maybe will be some pretty good players. We don't know. So I really look at the top of the draft when I grade the guys that are going to make the immediate impact, the first couple picks, and what they're going to do. And I think Minnesota's are going to be right up there.
I think some other teams, I think you could go maybe 7, 8, 9 deep. I like what the Philadelphia Eagles did from the get-go. I think when you look at Andy Reid, his ability to evaluate talent, where he has a passion for it, loves to scout players and evaluate guys that can come in and help his football team. And he goes at Mike Patterson, productive at USC, consistent, steady, and reliable, and very durable over the last 3 years. Reggie Brown at Georgia really picked up the pace this year at his best year as a Georgia Bulldog. Excellent week in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. Matt McCoy, one of Andy Reid's favorites, was a fast riser over the last month and a half. Guy that led the Mountain West Conference in solo tackles. Ryan Moats in that Brian Westbrook mold, same size, quick, very, very effective at Louisiana Tech running with the football. Sean Considine is smart safety, who also gives you excellent special teams ability. I think all these kids have a great opportunity to help this Philadelphia Eagle football team. Todd Hermans is a developmental tackle. He has skills, needs some technique work, needs to round his whole game into NFL-type shape in terms of being a guy who's more of a project initially, but has potential down the road. Trent Cole's that hybrid who went day 2. Scott Young, a former defensive tackle guard for 1 year. Armstrong and Marshall are those late-round guys you take a flyer with and see what happens. Armstrong has to become a more physical performer in the trenches, but he does have experience at Washington State. I like overall what Andy Reid did. He's going to get a lot of these players are going to make that football team. I would venture to say only 1 or 2 of these players will not have a chance to play in the National Football League and maybe as a part of the Eagles organization.
This was the most important draft for the Tennessee Titans in recent years. Last year was important. They have salary cap problems, and I am hearing great things about the draft from other personnel directors. You look at Adam Pac-Man Jones, he is the answer to losing Samari Rowe. They've addressed their offensive line with Michael Ruse right there. They've addressed receivers with Roby and Jones, and as you know, and then Vincent Miller back into the secondary. But then they have tried to tell Steve McNair, we will take care of you. We will protect you. Then, again, back to David Stewart, the tackle from Mississippi State. Another receiver, Roydell Williams, wide receiver Tulane, who Mel likes even better than the other 2 receivers. So the Tennessee Titans, and Bo Shafe, a guy who 6-year play at Texas because of medical reasons, but a guy who can catch the ball, has Frank Wycheck maybe type of potential if he can stay healthy, like what the Titans did.
Now let's go around again. Another team that I like, and what they did is the Dallas Cowboys. Again, a team that I look up at the top for what they wanted. You look at Bill Parcells, that defense underachieved last year after being #1 in the league a couple of years ago. Not a lot of people bought into it. Bill Parcells needed size. Got Jason Ferguson from the Jets in the offseason. DeMarcus Ware, 270-pounder that can play in a two-point stance or put his hand down. He's going to be a wrecking crew. Marcus Spears, 300-pound defensive end. That's what Bill Parcells loves, guys like that. This is harkening back to his New York Giant days. Kevin Burnett, the linebacker from Tennessee, about a 240-pounder. He has got a mean streak on him, and he's a great blitzer off the edge. Marion Barber III had some big moments in Minnesota. Maybe should have gone back for his last year, but did have some explosive moments with Minnesota, and I'm sure was very intriguing to Bill Parcells. You look at the rest of them, Rob Petitti, the old lineman from Pittsburgh, as we talked about, shut out Dwight Freeney when he went against Freeney when he was at Syracuse. But up at the top of this, the guys are going to have the initial impact. We're back to Bill Parcells type of defense. Big, physical, nasty guys.
Justin Berrio, that 6th-round pick of the Cowboys as well, Mike. Keep an eye on him. I like the Baltimore Ravens. We raved about him yesterday, getting Mark Clayton. Fortunate to see Mark Clayton still on the board with Derek Mason. What an upgraded wide receiver it is for the Ravens. Kyle Bowler needs to pick it up the pace, and I think he has that opportunity now that the surrounding cast is going to be better. Dan Cody, combo defensive end, outside linebacker. Rest assured, Rex Ryan, new defensive coordinator, will find ways to get Cody after the quarterback. Adam Terry was a left tackle at Syracuse. Interesting to see how they work him into the mix, where they move him inside the guard. Jason Brown is center. Surprised he was there. Remember, Duke Preston won a couple picks earlier from Illinois. That allowed Jason Brown to slide down to Baltimore. And Justin Green, I thought, was the top all-around fullback in this draft. Derek Anderson, I know Mort, a lot of quarterback coaches like him, inconsistent. Completion percentage, accuracy, decision-making. He's going to be a project at quarterback. Highly regarded coming into Oregon State. I don't think fulfilled that potential to the maximum, but as a developmental quarterback, makes sense, Mort.
You know, this is Nick Saban's first draft, and I'm just going to give him the benefit of the doubt on a lot of these guys because he knows these players. And certainly he knew Ronnie Brown, the running back from Auburn, who obviously is going to replace that big boy that Ricky Williams left last season. Matt Roth, the defensive end from Iowa, boy, that's a great fit for them. Channing Crowder certainly has some medical issues, but it's a good value for Channing Crowder there, and again, familiarity with Travis Daniels, his cornerback at LSU. And I just believe, even the offensive tackle here, if Hudson Houck, their line coach, put his stamp on this guy, that's good enough for me. I'll tell you who had the best draft in 2 or 3 years, by the way, Susie.
Well, that's always how it goes. Everybody had the best draft this weekend. By the way, quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick of Harvard goes to the Rams. Mike Marks loves his quarterbacks. When we come back, there is one last thing to do. The Patriots have the last pick in the draft, Mr. Irrelevant. Welcome back. The diehards have made it to the bitter end. The Patriots are on the clock, pick number 255. And as you know, that is Mr. Irrelevant. It's a way to celebrate the underdog doing something nice for absolutely no reason at all. And what's impressive here is 4 out of these 6 players are still in the NFL.
They are, and I'll tell you, you look at some of these kids, you go back to Mike Green, a defensive back, a safety, Jim Finn, Ryan Hogue we talked about when he was selected, and of course, Andre Summersell. But you look at next year, and always we look ahead this time of year, Susan, Mike, and Mort, we go to say, okay, next year when we're sitting here, day 1 of the draft, who are going to be some of the top guys? And you look at some of those prospects. I mean, a lot of these kids you would have expected they would be here in this process this year. They opted to go back. Matt Leinart, I thought, would have been the #1 pick. Mort disagreed, but he would have been certainly very high up there. I think he's going into next year the #1 senior. Remember, these are only seniors, not juniors or third-year sophomores. #1 senior prospect. The left tackle at Virginia, DeBrickashaw Ferguson. Chad Greenway, I thought, was a better linebacker than any of the linebackers in this draft. Great job at Iowa. D'Angelo Williams at Memphis. Yeah, he would have been in that group with the big 3 this year, better served by going back. A.J. Hawk, all he's done since his freshman year is tackle and produce and be consistent. Marcus McNeil is a huge offensive tackle at Auburn. Eric Winston coming off an injury, has that mean streak, great athletic ability. Matthias Kiwanuka, if he can kick it up a notch and be more consistent week in and week out, could be a sack artist. Roderick Wright, same thing at Texas. And Jimmy Williams, safety to corner, shifted at 15 pass breakups and 6 interceptions this past year.
Guys, the pick's in. Mr. Irrelevant, as presented by Paul Salata, the founder of Mr. Irrelevant Week.
Work it, Paul.
The 255th pick in the draft of 2005 is Andy Stokes, a tight end from William Penn, and he becomes the 30th Mr. Irrelevant, and he will be feted in June 20th through 25th, Newport Beach, California. You're all invited, and wherever you are, Andy, give us a call. We'll see you in Newport Beach. Thank you very much.
And the real test is, we know that Mel knows everything about this guy, but save that, because we just want to acknowledge the incredible amount of work that goes into the planning for the NFL draft. Off the charts. Thank you to the entire production team. From all of us here at ESPN, we'll see you next year. Coming up next is SportsCenter. This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports.
With the first selection in the 2005 NFL Draft, the San Francisco 49ers select Alex Smith, quarterback, Utah. The Miami Dolphins select Ronnie Brown, running back, Auburn. The Chicago Bears select Cedric Benson, running back, Texas. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers select Carnell Williams, running back, Auburn.
3 running backs in the first 5, which is unheard of.
What did you expect this day to be like?
Well, I was hoping to talk to you after I got picked.
Pick them. Let's go.
With the 24th selection in the 2005 NFL Draft, the Green Bay Packers select Aaron Rodgers, quarterback from California.
There you go. We have 1 pick left. Denver has a compensatory pick.
Third round.
You're going to like it.
Compensatory pick, Maurice Claret, running back, Ohio State.
How about that?
I think it's a happy ending right now. I'm here. You know what I mean? I'm living the dream right now in the NFL.